I think for the Mayhem tryouts, I think it was last year. I think I Control-A deleted everyone that was over the age of 21, like straight away. Just the whole, all of them. It just wasn't what we're building. Like we weren't building a team like that. And we got Animo in the end, to be fair. But for the tryouts, we absolutely didn't accept anyone over the age of 21. I think that turned out to be a good decision. You know, in hindsight, if you look at the players we got, like all of them were good players. Like literally every single one of them. Even the ones like Chris and Adam that we ended up kicking are still great players. And the players we kept are even better. Like not even arguably, I think it was like the highest peak in all of their careers. It's the friendship. It's not the power of friendship. It's the opposite. Like it's the weakness of friendship. Like they need to be split up all the time. I think.
Okay.
But they absolutely. I think all the players got together, and I think like some of them were kind of like most of the players were not most, but like half the players were kind of on the fence, or like either way is fine. And then half of them were like, let's get rid of Gunba, right? I think Overwatch League. One of the reasons it suffered so much is that the casting was bad. Like I'm just gonna say, I think almost all of the league muted the casting. Most of the matches, unless it was literally like Uber or Avril or something, like it was like largely muted, and like it happened very often that our players or like staff or whatever would complain about the casting.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 8 of Uncoachable. Now, everyone probably knows us now because of our newfound fame and success, but some of you might not know we're actually pretty famous before us if we went to an Overwatch event. But sometimes, after people meet us in real life, they get a different impression of us than maybe they had than when they knew us online. So after people meet me, I often hear them walking away saying, wow, Nat Gladiators head coach is less of a pretentious prick than I thought he was. After people meet Chris, they often come in with the impression that, they didn't expect Chipser to be the most handsome guy they've ever met, but boy does he look worse in person. Often, big disappointment there. When people meet Unter, they often leave with the idea that, wow, his haircut really makes me think he beats his wife. But then that face really makes it hard for me to believe he has a wife. Well, when people meet Gunba, they often go in with the impression that he might be a bit of a cunt, a bit of a prick, a bit of a ballbuster. And actually, a lot of people leave with the idea that he's not as bad as his reputation. So that brings us to our guest, Gunba, and that's maybe a good place for us to start. Your reputation is one as a bit of a difficult coach or a harsh coach. Do you think that's a fair opinion everyone seems to have of you, or accurate to how you are?
I guess relatively speaking, right? I think that's not like a crazy thing to say when most of the coaches that you'll work with in Overwatch, I'm not sure if this is true, and it's definitely not true in Korea. It might not be true in other games as well, but most coaches are useless and don't really have like a strong voice because they're clueless. So it's like, how can they have a strong voice, right? To even be in that conversation, you have to be on that level. I think that with the players to be able to like argue with them and say, no, you're wrong. Like we should play this, or we should play like this, or you're playing badly, or whatever, right? So yeah, in Overwatch, I think that's absolutely true, right? In general, not so much. Yeah, I'm not unreasonable. I listen to the players a lot. I ask them questions. If they're not playing well, I'll take them aside and say, hey, what's wrong? What's going on here? Like, how do we get you playing well? I'm not like a complete asshole, but I don't tolerate people that sort of put their own interests before the team's, I think. And those people will definitely not get along with me at all. Yeah.
What happens in those situations then? Say there is a player who's acting selfishly or not pulling their weight.
I just kind of make their life hell, Like it's like I'm not someone who tolerates that kind of shit, Like I don't want to deal with it. Like if I don't deal with it, who is going to deal with it, I think I've seen a lot of coaches where like a player has like really strong opinions. They'll say, "Well, okay, we can try it." It's like, why are we going to waste time? Why are we going to try some bullshit for weeks? We have like limited practice and like we don't get to play a lot of the maps that often. You might get like 4 or 5 maps before you play it in the match. I think if you tolerate people like that, you're throwing. Like you're making life worse for everyone to make it easy for yourself. And so often the way I feel about it, and maybe this is like delusion, maybe I'm actually just a psychopath, I don't know. But I feel like by like making those players dislike me, I save everyone else the trouble of dealing with that. But I think that also reflects in the players that I've coached. They tend to be adults. They tend to be like really rational people that like, like they have that sense of teamwork and they have that sense of putting the team first. And like, I think that comes from the environment I create. So it always feels worth it at the end, even though during the season, and especially when we cut players, I'm saying this in like the current tense, but obviously Overwatch League's dead, so um, it feels bad during the season, but it works out in the end. I think the players are better people because of it, and better players because of it. So I never regret it afterwards. Yeah.
Sounds like when you work with people, you've got like a really strong opinion all of the time, and you present it in like a very firm way as well. Just, from like any experience that I've ever had with you, it definitely seems like when you present your opinion on the game, you present it pretty much as a fact. What do you feel like your miss rate is with this stuff? Because I'd say that you're for sure like one of the higher hit rate people when it comes to your feedback. But how often do you think you just fuck it up and it's wrong?
A lot, right? I mean, how can you not? Overwatch is so complicated. Like, all the comps we've had and all the ideas we've had and like strategies and how to play the maps and player signings, and it's like a good success rate. It's like 60%, right? Like, I think most people are shooting worse than that. So I think it's less about
present everything as fact. Present everything as fact, and 60% of the time it'll be right. That's the goal.
You just have to be more right than other people. And like, occasionally I've worked with people who are more right than me about certain things, and like I defer to them, but it's just not very often. So I don't get that experience very often. Yeah, I don't know. It's like you have to be confident being able to say something and then be wrong and then learn from the thing that you were wrong about and why you were wrong. It's like, it's better than this like fucking hokey pokey fucking you get your say, we'll try your thing, we'll try my thing, like where no one learns anything and everyone's like weaponizing their ideas and everyone's like entrenched in the thing they want to try. It's better to have like one sense of direction, I think, and have someone like me, but like other coaches that like remember what players say and what they wanted to try, and make sure if it's a good idea and it's well thought out, you try it and you champion their ideas as well as yours, if that makes sense. Not just like always your idea, so it's less about like always getting my way and more about always getting the team to be on the same way, if that makes sense. A lot of the time that is my way, but if I work with players that I think are really smart or like have really good ideas or like they've been right when I was wrong kind of thing, I'll remember that, and same with assistant coaches I've worked with, I'll give them that credit as well. So,
yeah, I mean, if you feel like getting it your way is the most important thing the majority of the time, so that everyone has this like unified vision, how do you think like player happiness plays into that? Because I'm sure that, for all the times that you say your way, a decent proportion of the time, like at least one of the guys must disagree, right? Or
every time.
Do you just pick players, or do you basically just stamp out players' ideas so frequently that they just stop presenting them and they're just like, fuck it, we're going to do what he says?
Yeah, it's hard to be rational, like about my, like, I'm not third personing myself. I can't see when I'm being rational, when I'm being objective, right? So that probably does happen. I probably do discourage players sometimes from putting forward their own ideas or their own opinions. And that's a weakness. That's something I think about a lot. And even with Gravy, I say all the time, like, are we throwing? Like, is this actually a good idea? Like, the players hate it. Like, that's a factor we'll think about too. Like, how does that, do the players like this? Are we making them resent us by doing this? And like, that will play into the quality of the idea. And generally, we only like hard pushed ideas that the players didn't like if we were like absolutely certain, So yeah, I think there's an element of that too. But like I said, like the way we did reviews, at least in Mayhem, we talked to the players while we talked the most. They still talked quite a bit, and we still asked them what they thought and pushed them to give us ideas as well, and they did, So at the end, we had like good player contribution, I think. Welcome back, Chris. Yeah.
Welcome back, Chrissy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in the end it worked out, and we got value out of our players intellectually. But I think as a baseline, that's not true for a lot of players. Like, you just won't get that value from them. They don't have that value to give, and you shouldn't always seek it out. I think some players are stupid. Like some players are not. That's not why they're good at the game. They just have good aim or whatever, like good mechanics or something like. But yeah, absolutely. When like a player like someone who's like super smart, I'll absolutely ask him questions about what he thinks about like which tank he should play or like how he thinks we should play the situation. And I think in reviews the players are really confident to say like I as you said, I say things as fact. I'd say I really don't think we should play here. Like, this is a bad position, and like I think Checkmate, you should go here. And Checkmate would say, well, no, I think that's bad. I don't want to do that. I'd be like, why? And he'd say, well, this is the reason. And we'd kind of learn that way as well. So I don't think players were like afraid to pitch in at all, right? They just didn't feel obligated to do that all the time, right? That wasn't like their job. So they would do it when they felt like otherwise it would be a mistake, which is, I think, a good system.
Were you there for all that, Chris, or have you skipped the time period?
Almost none of it. So I'm obviously very scared.
Yeah. All right, we'll keep you in there. Keep you in the back pocket then.
Yeah.
Do you think
I was gonna...
like? No. Please take the floor.
Yeah. I was thinking, and this is obviously a big gamble of me to talk for more than 30 seconds in a row, but we'll see. We'll see if it works. You know the political compass that they do where you've got like the x-axis and the y-axis? I always felt like actually one thing you could do with coaching is you could kind of like draw it up in terms of like, you've maybe got, is this the x-axis or the y-axis where it goes up and down?
That's the y-axis, mate, yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys. The y-axis where it's like, at the top, you're like, you never listen to players and it's like a full dictatorship. And then at the bottom where it's like, I think there is a lot of coaches, like to be fair, I echo a lot of what Gunba says, where he's like, a lot of coaches in the Overwatch League are just like so terrified to piss off players that it's just everything is just like, well, how do you feel we should play this? Like they never like actually give their own opinion. It's just like full media discussion. So you've got like the top and the bottom where it's like communism over here and then like a dictatorship at the top. And then you've got like maybe like the x-axis, which is like how much of like team VOD review you do versus how much do you do like as an individual. And I felt like if you create this graph, I always felt like maybe Krusty was somewhere in the lib left. Is it the lib left they call it? Like the, I don't know what it is. I don't really.
Don't overcomplicate this shit. We understand so far. It's not.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Krusty's over here where there's a lot of the stuff is like an individual coach, but then I think he also like asks the players a lot. I feel like I'm somewhere top right as a coach. Like I feel like it also is ironically, I think it's Reddit where it thinks my politics are. So it's like that's where my coaching at least.
For libs of sexual area.
Like I don't know where is top right Hitler? Is that where he was? Like he was like full.
Top left is dictatorship with team review, right? That's what you said?
No, top left is dictator, but individual review. So the Stalin of Overwatch coaching.
Oh, okay. The other way. Okay, yeah, top right. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm top right, where I do everything pretty much like in team coaching, but I also I feel like I give my players like less say than maybe almost most coaches in the league, if not all.
That's a low bar. That's a low bar, though. I mean, honestly, like.
Yeah. So if you were to put yourself on the compass, I hope this isn't a gang sign or something. Put yourself on the compass. Where do you think you would be in this analogy?
Fuck, I don't know, like team review dictatorship, right?
Yeah, top right.
Yeah, but that puts us in the same place. Whereas I feel like
I think at the end of the day, like, if one of you had to be Hitler, it's got to be Gunba, though, right? Like, there's just no way that Chris gets to be Hitler in this situation.
Maybe you're middle, but you're like team review, you know, like middle of the communism scale.
No, I don't know, because I feel like we're comparing like dictatorship to niceness. Maybe I'm quite nice to players, but I also feel like in London, like the players didn't get like a huge amount of say.
I think the x-axis is wrong. I think the difference between team and individual, and there should be like there's like a niceness scale here, maybe instead.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, that would help things.
Yeah.
So who isn't doing team review? I feel like everyone's doing team review, right? Like.
Yeah.
No,
Krusty wasn't. Krusty wasn't.
Yeah,
how'd that go?
I think a lot of coaches.
Let's focus on functional styles,
yeah. I think a lot of coaches spend their time doing individual stuff too, right? Like KDG, when he was our coach, I would say he was like 75% individual, 30% team facing. And I'm convinced like Moby would do a lot of individual stuff too. I think Kasaurus spoke about the idea that he would start to do more individual coaching as it went on, or vice versa, one or the other. So I think there is a lot of coaches that prefer to do everything with like players one-on-one as opposed to sit everyone around like as a team.
I mean, I do think for Kasaurus, we'd probably have to consult those coaching documents that he's been slowly assembling in the 10-month off-season to find out what he's really, where he lies on the political.
But this is interesting though, because I think something I noticed, like, and something players gave me flack for, like day one, that they never criticized me for again by the end of the season, is our team reviews were individual reviews, right? Like, if someone threw in the team review, we'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like, why'd you do that? You threw the game. Like, you can't do that. You should do this." And we'd do that in the individual review in front of the team. And I remember my Korean players, like Animo, especially like really experienced players, they would say like straight away, like, I don't like when you criticize individual players for individual problems in front of the team. Like, because they felt like I think what they actually said was like, hey, this is like a waste of our time. But that's obviously bullshit, right? I mean, it's like fucking 5 minutes. Like, it's not a waste of it. No one cares. Like, they feel like they're being attacked in front of other people. But I feel like the being comfortable with that was a big reason why we were successful. Like, the fact that everyone was so comfortable being honest, and like that was something we showed every day. Like, I could criticize every one of the players in front of them, and they could criticize me. And like, I think that's really important. Like, I think that honesty, and like, I think a lot of teams that fail have that barrier between players, or even between players and coaches, where they walk around on eggshells. And I never felt that for our players ever. Like I never felt that. Even when, we had like a mostly Korean team with like a Western coaching staff, and like random Western players thrown in over the 2 seasons. I think a lot of teams that was exactly a recipe for disaster. I think Washington, for example, like, but on our team it never was, because I never felt like the Korean players on our team would never have, as an example of a problem we see quite often. The Korean players would never once ever think that the Western players were getting off scot-free with bad performance, right? Like it was obvious they were being criticized every day because we did it publicly. And they would, sometimes message the players individual stuff if we needed to, but we tried to do it in the review from the third person. So like in Florida, I don't think there was individual or team review. It was one thing, but I think that solved a lot of problems in the end.
I mean, I feel like that definitely, like you use Washington as the example. It definitely like ties into like the coach's knowledge of the game, like you said for yourself at the start. Like you know a lot, so you can present your opinions strongly a lot. It's like, what, I don't know what the fuck Getamaze knew, like strategically, just like famously like a very heavily dad coach leaning guy. And I did, it does feel wonderful to have Gladiators coaching style of just flaming the main tank for an hour every single morning, every single day, for every day of the year, to have that vindicated by you saying, we don't walk around on eggshells. We're not unwilling to point out people's mistakes, because Smash talking about where our Winston should have jumped for an hour every single day, that feels a lot better to know we were on the right track there towards.
Okay, to be fair though, we never did that. Like I made sure that, and I was very protective of like the weak players on the team who could easily get bullied. Like I'd make sure they get criticized, but I try to make sure they don't get bullied by the whole team all the time, because players aren't reasonable about. They don't have 6 or 7 years of coaching experience and seeing how players develop. In their mind, if they yell at someone enough, they'll improve. Like Donghak and fucking Atlanta, like how'd that go, right? Like that threw away a perfectly winnable season. Just that one problem alone, I think. Like. So I think letting players like feast on their fucking teammates is something a coach has to stop as well. And so being involved in that process makes that easier, because I'm running the process, so it never happens. It's like, and when a player would do that, I would kind of, I don't want to use this word, but humiliate them in front of the team a bit, where they're like, if you have a player that's not playing perfectly, that's like bullying some shit player on your team, and you will have shit players on your team, I could step in and say, hey, actually, you made a bunch of mistakes too. Like, you should really focus on your own mistakes. Like, why are you only talking about this other guy on your team? So it was a balancing act, I think, but that was, again, possible because of the top-down structure, right?
Yeah. I mean, you said that Animo complained about this style where, like you point out a lot of people's individual mistakes. Was that all because people didn't like being called out, or was because it had like contributed to review length as well? Because my feeling was like, yeah.
I mean, Animo was one, Ham said it too. I think Checkmate said it, but most of the Koreans said it that had a voice on the team. But it definitely came from, I think Animo came from like that experience. As for why, I think, I really think it's just they framed it as like a time problem, or like, why do I have to be here for that? But I think it was more about the feelings problem. It was like they were afraid that no one likes getting called out in front of a bunch of people. But the fact that you're afraid to do that speaks to your inability to like be a professional, if that makes sense. Like you have to get past that to you kind of a team where people just don't talk to each other, or like are afraid, or don't think that something's being worked on, or think that next time they show up they're going to make the same mistakes. Like having the individual feedback be invisible, I think, is such a mistake. It's not unwinnable doing it that way, but I think it creates a lot of problems, and also makes things take longer too, because the coach has to like review everything and then go home and then watch individual POVs and then send the player feedback. It's like a lot of the time you're watching the same fights with the same players. You can give feedback to multiple individuals from one fight when they're all there together. So it does actually save time in a way. Like I think in Mayhem we had like a really good separation of after Scrims finished, even though sometimes we did 3 blocks, and sometimes we, especially in the first season, like last year, we did like a lot of Scrims. We had that barrier where like when players went home, they were free. Like they didn't really have to interact with the team or the coaches if they didn't want to. They chose to a lot of the time. They they would party and stuff together and whatever. But there was like a clear barrier between work and going home, and I think that helped as well. And that was because we did everything before we left. Like there wasn't this like homework phase of our team at all, I think.
Was that intentional when Florida were choosing how to set things up, and there was this divide compared to like a team house setup or something, or was it just how it happened to be?
Let me think about how we made that decision. Team house versus apartments. I think we just had the apartments. I think we had them from the previous year. I don't think that decision had anything to do with the team house. That being said, I hate team houses. Yeah, I really hate team houses. Like, I think people need, at least I do, and I think a lot of our players appreciated this. I think most players, given the choice, would choose apartments. I think team houses just save money. I don't think there's any actual benefit to them. I think there's just like this idea that if you have a team house, you're going to like bond with your teammates more. There's going to be more organic sort of interactions with the team. And I think what really ends up happening is that the moment there's problems on the team, you can't escape the people that you have a problem with. And you have a job where you go to work and solve these problems every day. So why would you want to also bring them home, right? Like, there is such a thing as, not overdoing something and like giving something time. And I think team houses are shit, to be honest. Even though, I think Shock won some of the seasons they had a team house, right? It's not like it's not a deal breaker at all. But yeah, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, we had it on season 2. We were on Fusion. We were a team house, and I had the same idea. I was like, we need to get apartments. But I actually felt like after seasons 3 and 4, I actually missed the team house a little bit. Like, I actually felt like, especially if you have like a team that gets on more than they don't, it actually is like a team house is really nice. Like, to see everyone all the time, like hang out, like a little area to like watch TV and stuff. And I actually felt like maybe it's because both London and Philly never had like such like massive frictions to the point where like people hated each other too much. Like, maybe there was like some shit with like Carpe and Neptuno in season 2, but apart from that, most of the time people got on. But I actually came away from I guess I've lived 2 years in apartments and 3 years in a team house. I came away from it thinking, actually, I prefer team houses. I feel like there is like, people do get closer. Like, I imagine like if there was, especially if players have their own PCs in their own rooms, I think a lot of players, like especially on London, if players had access to PCs in their room, they would have just went to their room a lot. And I actually feel like you would have like saw a lot less of each other, which probably would have been a detriment to it, like overall. So I'm actually like, I was team apartments, but I think I'm team houses now after doing both like for more than 1 year.
Yeah, I have no experience with team houses, to be fair. Like, I'm not someone with experience with that. I think Boston did it in like season 2, but it wasn't really a team house. The players had apartments and then came to the coaching team house, I guess, to play. But yeah, I think the players liking each other in those examples probably helped a lot, like, obviously.
Yeah.
And the Florida players did meet up in one of the apartments every time and do things that were legal according to their age at the time. Yeah, but they would always hang out and stuff and watch like UFC and stuff. Hydron did a lot of that. Animo would like lead activities, and we also had like the team dinners and stuff. So they were seeing a lot of each other, but it was more scheduled and like after work kind of thing. And then when they wanted to, they could go home. So I do agree that like players bonding with each other is important, but there's probably different ways to get there, I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think both can work. The worst part about team houses is the sleep. I think that's like the absolute killer. Yep. I think that for me, I think X-Pro remembers it. The first PowerPoint I did for the team, I was like, listen, if we live in a team house together, you guys, I will literally fucking turn the internet off if I hear people like after a certain time. And I had time periods where I was waking up at like 5 a.m. going to bed at 9. So I was like, oh, please just be quiet like after I go to bed. And there was times where I've like lost my cool with players because I hear them fucking screaming. If I didn't like really crack the whip on sleep more than anything, you would have fucking players up at 4 a.m. We had it on London where like, not on London, on Fusion, where like the Korean players especially always stayed up really late and they would just fucking scream and shout playing FIFA or whatever. So Neptuno decided to take revenge to wake up early to stream in like Europe. So you basically get it. Right. So like I remember EQO would come in to me, he's like, these fucking Koreans keep me awake till 4 a.m. Then Neptuno starts to stream at 6 a.m. and screams like a fucking monkey. So next thing I know, I get 2 hours of sleep a night where I'm not being interrupted. And it's like, okay, yeah, if you let the team get to that situation, then a team house will absolutely blow up your team faster than anything. But on London, we were really, really good with our sleep. Like, I feel like no one, Admiral was like a little bit naughty at times. Like, he would try to stay up late, but he would stay up silently. So it wasn't too bad. And most players were in bed by like 11, 12 every night. No problem. So I think we managed the team house well. And I think when done well, I actually feel like there was like a higher... the thing is with apartments, it can never blow up your team. Like, no matter how bad it goes in apartments, I think...
It's safe.
A team house can 100% make things worse in certain situations.
I genuinely cannot imagine the 22 Gladiators with a team house. It was like Reiner would not sleep for like multiple days straight. Like, that guy was just fucking on a completely different level. Paddy in the apartments that we were in, Paddy had like, I think 4 or 5 formal noise complaints within the first month and a half of living there because he was just screaming in the middle of the night. The guy didn't have a computer. He didn't have a computer at home.
What
and he was screaming
at?
In his apartment. Nobody knows. Nobody fucking knows. But the guy was just screaming in the middle of the night. Like,
you had no computers at home?
Unbelievable. No, when we only had computers in the office.
I feel like that's fucked.
Poverty orb.
That's so fucked. Mayhem didn't
Same
pay that
lo-
much,
same
but man,
levels of work.
Mayhem was so good with that shit. Like the apartments were great. We had fucking computers. We had like free food, like snacks in the office, computers on
No,
both sides.
we slowly had our food budget like chipped away at over time. You know, it's
Oh,
like
that's
started out with
that's
enough
normal, yeah.
started out with enough money for 2 square meals, and by the end it was $0, and it was like, yeah, you're fine. Like,
We never got there, thank God. But
yeah, but yeah, I feel like a team house just generally, you know, like there's maybe like a potential like 5% bonding buff that you could get, which you can actually get if you just socialize with each other by making the effort anyway. All you need is like 1 or 2 initiators to actually have people socializing together. But the potential downsides are enormous. Like I think I would genuinely rather top myself than live with the vast majority of the people that I've been on teams with. Like they're all just fucking grubs. It's like, you know, it's bad enough to live with Face and he leaves a couple of forks in the sink. Like I genuinely cannot imagine how much I would freak out at the mess that like living with half of the players would be. It's like I walked into Yaki's apartment at the end of the year. This is the roasting Yaki section of the podcast, by the way. And there was like black mold growing all through his
I've heard about
bathroom,
this
you
before.
know?
Like different players
like-
too. Same thing. Yeah, Koreans
Yeah,
create
it's
mold where they
insane.
go, I don't know what it is. Like
it's so fucked. Like just so disgusting.
We had it in Fusion Season 3 where when the players all left, like to go, we checked out, it was Hisu and Alarm's room, and it was genuinely a biohazard in there. It's like fucking like horrendous, like all of the sinks and stuff like that. It's like holy fuck, like I don't know. Yeah.
Envy in
I'm
season
not
1,
clean,
same
but-
thing. Yeah, someone should investigate what's going on with these Korean players. It's some kind of biohazard fucking thing going on there. But I think having the different cultures in the same team house is also not good. I think that's a big part of it. Like, because I think London, for example, had a bunch of Europeans who are not stereotypically loud in general. But for example, our Koreans this year were up until 4 a.m. every night, like every single night. I couldn't live with them. There's no fucking chance. Like that wasn't me. You know, I don't think Merit slept most days. Like, so I think having a team with the same cultural background, the same expectations is a big part of it. And Mayhem had like shared apartments, like 3 people per apartment with like 3 different rooms and 2 bathrooms and whatever. And we let them kind of pick their apartment mates, if that makes sense. And I think that helped a lot too, because the Koreans kind of had their friend groups and then the Westerners. Yeah. So I think the cultural difference is a big part of why it can or can't work depending on the team. But I don't
So you
think Mayhem
think
would have worked in a team house.
You think a mixed team house? Would you propose like a 2-state solution, perhaps, where you have some segregation?
Segregation, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then like then you can have the 2 cultures living.
Keep the mold in one side and
Getting
then
really top right in this situation. I think what was true in London, at least, is if anything with our players, I think a lot of them were quite reserved and quite not very social. So putting them all in the team house actually helped, because if we had just given them apartments or a computer in their own room, they would have very easily been like, Scrims done, I'm off, won't talk to these guys until VOD tomorrow or something. So it actually forced a lot of, I guess, more of our quieter personalities to interact and socialize. That maybe wouldn't have been true if we'd just give them in their own apartments or something.
Yeah, I definitely feel like on London, Chris was describing himself. I'm not sure if he can hear me as he stands up, but he was describing himself as this, this top right authoritarian coach. Although it was actually the niceness scale, but he was describing himself as a far right coach. And it's like, I feel like the London players, they were probably like exceptionally moldable or, exceptionally nice. I feel like I think about, half of those guys, and it's literally like, you could just tell them fucking anything and they'd be like, yes, sir, or at worst, they'd just like quietly seethe over it. Like they were far too scared to argue. I feel like, it's really only Jamie or Hardy that had enough like spine in them, enough backbone, if you will, to fight back when you gave them feedback. So maybe that's delusional, but I do feel like you had a pretty moldable roster. I look at these past Gladiators rosters, and it's like, Jesus fucking Christ! Like you've got to wage a small war to give a single piece of feedback to more than half of the roster.
We couldn't have done what we did on London with your Gladiators team, even though on paper it's a much like stronger roster individually.
I reckon Gunba could have made it work. Like you just get the true far right coach in there, and he'll fucking mold anyone. Like.
I think I had a good success rate with Koreans. I found Koreans really easy to work with because I think they accept that sort of dictatorship stuff automatically, which is like, it's good. Like they trust people who have like authority, if that makes sense, which can be good and bad. But in the case where the authority is making good decisions or has like a balanced mindset, it can be really good. I think Western players tend to be more argumentative in general, especially when they're successful. I think there's like a clear ramp when they start winning that they get an ego immediately, like, which I didn't see as much in the Korean players. So I know you guys have talked about having trouble working with Korean players before. And it's like, I just didn't experience that to the same extent. Like, I think because of my style, it works well with them. So yeah, I think cultural differences are huge. Like, honestly, I think Glads would have been a tough one. I think even for me, that would have been really hard. Like a lot of really successful players. I couldn't have fixed Yaki. You know, I'm going to tell you right now, like this stuff, no fucking chance.
That's not a successful player. You can take him off the list of what you just described. He didn't make play-ins 3 years in a row. There's no success. You kill that bit, man.
But it's his perspective, you know, like what he thinks. You know, that's what's important. Like
nothing at all. Just 2 eyes.
Sorry,
staring
Yaki.
forward.
I thought the segment was done, but we brought it back again.
It was actually a 2-parter this week.
Yeah, no, unfixable that one.
Is it something you look for when you're building the team then, or when you're recruiting players? Like you're looking for a certain, I don't know what you call it, like an openness to this or a willingness to join the system? Maybe in some ways even having a bit of a reputation as this type of coach actually helps the players know what they're signing up for.
I'm getting messages on Discord from someone in this call. Should I talk about the answer? I feel like that's a line. Like, do I want to cross that line?
I don't know. That's a dangerous line to cross. I don't know if you want to go there.
Sure, let's do it. I think about everything actually. Things that like people don't think about at all. I'm not gonna say the first one. Fuck it. Shut up. That's not okay. We can't say that. Look, you know, I think it's a combination of factors. I'm not someone who like reads into like what people think we shouldn't look at. I think a lot of people say age is a good example. Like they say age shouldn't be a factor in making your decisions. It's absolutely a factor in making decisions for me. Like, of course it is. You know, like if you get someone who's 23 years old and they haven't succeeded, they're shit. Like, yeah, you've had your time. Like, I think I remember Stella messaged me once and he's like, "Can I get a tryout?" I'm like, "No, you're 23 years old. You're too old. Like, this isn't happening. Like, you're never going to get where you're going. You know, like it's just not going to happen because it hasn't happened yet. And why wouldn't it have happened yet? When like, you know, I think Gravy made a good point. He said like, who was the best Genji in the world when he was 16, right? Like maybe even younger than that. You know, like talent is obvious. I think it's not grown. You know, if you're not good now, you won't be good in the future. I think. But yeah, a lot of factors in the tryouts. I think something you said there, Xavier, is you said like, what do you look for in the tryouts and stuff? And it's like, I think you can see the players that won't fit the system straight away. Like, I think they're the players that make excuses when they die, or like after they die, they make some explanation like, "Oh, that was so unlucky," or "I didn't know he was there." It's like, shut up! Like, shut the fuck up! Like, why are you saying this shit? Like you're not helping your team win at all. Like, so I think it's like more easy than people realize to identify these players who have these bad tendencies that lead to them making excuses or them being, you know, delusional or thinking way too highly of themselves. If they can't handle dying in Overwatch, they're fucking lost. Yeah, straight away. Like, and I think also another thing you said is like, yeah, building the team. Like that's the operating term there. It's like building the team is something I got to do every time. That's not always true, right? Like, did Unter get to build Glads when you went into Glads? No, I mean, there were some pieces already there. There was an established team. There was an established coach. Like, you know, you don't have that level of control. Every time I built a team, I had like full control over who was on the team. No matter what someone said, "Hey, can we get my friend?" No, like, you know. So I think it's not that hard to make those decisions. It's hard to get into a position to make those decisions where an org trusts you to do that. And for a good reason. I think many coaches would fuck it up, and they have, right? But yeah, I look for a lot of traits in players before we sign them, and a lot of those things, you know, like other people don't really think about. A big one for me is like Wikipedia experience. Like if I see on Wikipedia they played for 7 years and they're just okay, no, get out. Like that's not interesting to me. You look at Rupel. Everyone's like, how did we find Rupel? It's like, look at his Wikipedia before we signed him, right? Look at that shit. Like he played like one team and they were dog shit. You know, it's like obvious this guy has like more potential to give. And for example of like a current player like that, I think about someone like Gala, right? Like Gala has like no experience. He came into World Cup. He's doing super well. He looks kind of like a bit shit now because he's kind of inexperienced, but you give this guy a few years, he's going to be a top player. You know, it's obvious. Like, I think there's like a bunch of things like that, like these sort of like categorical things you can say about each player that can make it very easy to see which players will succeed and which ones won't.
Is it okay to talk about the age screening system? Like you said, you said straight up to Stella that you wouldn't give him a tryout because he was 23. I feel like I have some vague memory of like, I don't know if it was a Valiant thing or maybe it was Mayhem.
Fine. Yeah, fuck it, I'll say it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We're ruining careers over here. Yeah, all right. I think for the Mayhem tryouts, I think it was last year, I think I Control-A deleted everyone that was over the age of 21, like straight away. Just the whole, all of them. It just wasn't what we're building. Like we weren't building a team like that. And we got Animo in the end, to be fair. But for the tryouts, we absolutely didn't accept anyone over the age of 21. I think that turned out to be a good decision, you know, in hindsight. If you look at the players we got, like all of them were good players. Like literally every single one of them, even the ones like Chris and Adam that we ended up kicking are still great players. And the players we kept are even better. Like I think doing that is how we found someone like someone, because we weren't looking at experienced players. Like we're like a budget team. We're not going to find the 22, 23-year-old guy who can carry us to every playoff. Like that guy has a team, So if you want to find value, I think that's where you find it. It's the young players. Specifically, I think players with less experience, but usually they are younger, right? That's how that works. So like, yeah.
I guess one benefit you've got is all of your systems. It's really hard to argue that it wasn't successful. So it might seem a bit harsh to delete anyone under a certain age, but you literally did it and won the league. So it was probably a good decision in the end.
That seems like tacit support, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I feel like you're almost entirely vindicated, when you control A delete everyone over the age of 21, and then your young gun like someone, you sign him on a dirt cheap contract, and then a year later he carries you through to the
to be fair, there are definitely good players above the age of 21. We're just not getting them. Like
yeah, I mean, like they're established. You never get if they're in an open mayhem tryout, they weren't they weren't on that list. The good players over the age of 21 weren't applying to mayhem.
There are people that should have retired and hadn't retired. At the end of the day, that turned out to be true.
Yeah.
Well, how does that...
It feels bad to dunk on Stella. Nice guy. What's up?
How does that combine with players like Merit and Chorong then, who are then more established talents, who have already had success, who then come into the team?
What do you mean? We didn't really try them out, to be fair. Like, we looked at who we wanted to keep for the next season. We decided, not to keep some of the players we had at that time. And then I think Houston just offered us Merit, and we were like, oh, that's a fucking no-brainer. Like, this guy's an elite player now. And then I think Chorong, we had to sacrifice a lot of salary to get Chorong, but he was friends with Ham as well. Ham has really high-quality friends because he's a high-quality player, which helped a lot. So we just got them because they were elite right now. The fact that their age was there was kind of like a bonus. The fact that they had more room to grow and did grow with us is great, But we were signing them as elite players that were good now, right? And that can go the other way too, right? Hydron signed a 1-year contract, as you guys probably remember, for last year. All the AT players did. And I had conversations with Hydron where I was like, you need to be good now because developing you is a waste of time. Developing you is not my job. There's no point. I'm not here to make you better because we can't keep you next year. You need to be winning us games right now. Which I think he took offense to that, to be honest, but I stand by it. I think that's the right mindset. So, yeah, age is just a factor, obviously. The contract lengths and their experience and how good they are is all a factor as well, of course. But absolutely willing to sign good players with the money to do so. This wasn't possible in those seasons, and the fact that we got the roster we did this year was insane, right?
Yeah, I mean, you coached Marjed and Hydron last year for the 22 season. Then you let them both go. Do you think that these guys? Do you think they had what was their biggest issue? I suppose because I feel like this year they've been further exposed in the sense that it's maybe less so for Marjed because the guy just won the World Cup. He's had a bit of an insane run it back to make things work for him because he just gets to play the aim hero in a very strong meta for it. But I feel like Hydron and Marjed, they've both had massive failure with Toronto. They had a near perfect meta for them and they hard fumbled it. And then Hydron, he's kind of continued to fumble. He lost in World Cup, terrible placement for NA World Cup. And then again, now, they've come second in NA contenders. They've lost to the team that I'd say probably, watching that series, it feels like they just shouldn't have won. Timeless shouldn't have won the NA finals for Flash Ops, but they managed to edge it out.
Neither team deserved to win it. Yeah.
They both just sucked, dude. Holy fuck.
Yeah, it was bad.
EU, I don't know. I feel like there's 4 players in EU at least that are better at May than in NA. NA's
every top
talent
team
looks
EU,
insanely low. The macro.
I think
in NA
Lucio as well. I think, and maybe even Ram, and probably Queen. Actually, most of the heroes. Other than Hitscan, I think.
I think Kalu's looked quite solid on Queen. On Ram, I'd say. I think he looked decent, but Hawk looked really lost on especially Junker Queen. Hawk looked completely.
Yeah, he did.
It was insane. Yeah, Lucio's both of them just had the most game losing ults in the entire fucking universe. Sorry, we're skipping to what would usually be an end segment talking about Flash Ops, but yeah, there was just the only thing that was actually really good in NA, they were just insane at doing this combo, was the fucking window into rail one-shot shit. I swear every single window fight was just an instant fight win for whoever had the window because there was just a pick every time, guaranteed.
I feel like in EU we did that too, though. No,
I didn't see the same results with it.
Yeah, I think that's because we're aware of it, though, right? People don't just stand in the open against window. I feel like I saw that quite a lot in NA, where like the window would go down and like the whole team is just standing there getting windowed. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
well, I mean, they're not ready for the window to happen when it's the only ult in the game. Like, it should be obvious, you know. But you asked, okay, this is like 600 questions in one. But you asked about Hydron and Marty, right? That was the original question. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll come back. We'll go back 5 minutes to that. We replaced them. We won the league. I think that's probably the summary of that. Like, that's where that's going. It's like we replaced them with great players, to be fair. But yeah, I think they're chokers. I think that's like 90% of it. Like, they don't perform when it matters. I think Hydron's like a much better player than Marchit, to be fair. Like, I do want to say, I think Hydron has like actual potential. But yeah, I think even with us, I think that was true. They just didn't perform when it mattered. I saw it like their very first matches. I saw it at the end of the season as well in the playoffs. And it's just like, I think maybe with time they could like constantly be exposed to these things so that it's less of a big deal to them, if that makes sense. Once they've had like the World Cup experience, they've had the Overwatch League experience. Eventually, I think choking is something that does go away to some extent. But I think if you compare that to like someone's a player who choked at the start of the 2022 season all the time, like for like 6 months. But by the end of it, he didn't. By the end of it, he was the guy we thought he'd be, right? I didn't see that from Hydron and Margit. I just didn't see that progression of like over time getting better fast enough in the matches that mattered. I think, to be honest, like one of the rules after that season, I said to myself, is like we cannot sign people who choke in tryouts, in matches at all. Like we just can't do that because I think there's nothing more poisonous to a team than chokers. I think chokers are like far and away the worst thing you can have on your team, because what happens with chokers is you do really, really, really well in scrims, right? And then you go into a match and like 1 to 2 of your players just don't play the fucking game and the results don't matter anymore. Like your results are basically random and it makes all of your practice fucking worthless. It's like you can't ever develop confidence again because you go into every scrim and you win and you're like, does this even matter? We won every scrim last time, we still lost, you know? It's like, I hate chokers. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's something I really regret ever accepting, I think. And we saw it in the tryouts too. Like Hydron was like streaming his fucking POV to AT for some reason. But he choked against like Glister in tryouts. And I just remember thinking like we had a chance to see that happening before we signed him, and we signed him anyway. Like that's a choice I made, you know. And I regretted that a lot, like that season, to be honest. I had a lot of problems with Hydron. Obviously, that's why we signed Exy. But yeah, hopefully that summarizes my thoughts on those two. I think it was necessary for us to cut them. I think I was right about them. You know, unfortunately, like I do like them. Well, I like Hydron. But look, I'm not giving anything away here. Like, but yeah, I don't know. I think I hope they figure this shit out because they need to, right? I mean, we saw it again in the fucking flash ops. We just saw it again. Yeah. Like, yeah, even in the fucking World Cup, I think if you watch the last map of Margit playing Ilari, like this dude could hit the side of a fucking barn. You know, like he's rocketing into walls. He was like, I think they won because China sucked in that moment. You know.
I mean, Leave was just giving it away. Leave was like, "This is going to be my first win ever. I've got to stop this." Like,
no, I think to be fair though, I think to give China and Korea credit, like you have to think about their day. I've seen this a lot with tournaments. I've been through it as well, especially like the way the World Cup worked. It was like single limb, and for some reason China and Korea ended up on the same side. Not to go back to World Cup, I know you guys talked about this, but China and Korea are on the same side of the bracket, and they play this like super intense match super early in the day, and like they have to wake up to do all the prep, to do like the walkout practice, to do the warm-up scrim. They're waking up like really early in the AM, right? They're playing this like banger match that's like super stressful, and then China has to play a map 5 against Saudi like the other end of the day, right? When Saudi got to wake up like probably 3 hours later, if I'm being honest. I think this shit decided the World Cup more than anything else. And
didn't Saudi also have a map 5 banger before the finals match? Like, if
true,
exhaustion is like the question, like didn't?
But I think that one of the big differences is like, I think it's harder for China and Korea to go from a dive mirror, which is like probably the big focus of their day as well. I think they probably prepared a lot more for each other than they did for like Finland and Saudi. Whereas I think Finland and Saudi are probably thinking about how to beat China and Korea the whole time, realistically, right? Like they knew that was a challenge. I think there's probably a bit of ego there as well, but just having to wake up early, I think fucks players. Like it's hard to perform at like 2 different ends of like a 12-hour day, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I just think probably they over prepared for each other and not enough for the last matches. Obviously the medal was good for EU as well, but
on a completely unrelated side note, how do you feel about death threats? How do you handle them?
I haven't gotten any. I mean,
the Uncoachable podcast is about to change that, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, look, if they, I don't think Saudi should have won the World Cup. I'll say that now. If I get death threats, that's okay.
Title plus death threat. Attribute the quote to Gunba in the title, please.
I'll just put
because
your
I do
email in the
think-
title as well.
Yeah, that's good. I'll give you my address. It's fine. They can't hurt me. They're not real. Look, the point is, I do want to say, I think the Saudi World Cup team did a good job. I think that's obvious, right? Like they definitely were at the same level as the other three teams at the top, right? That being said, I think with a different format, they don't win. I do think that. I think China and Korea take it every time. We saw Finland almost beat Saudi, right? Like it was super close, and it's like, who can look at that Finnish roster and say, like, this is a real Overwatch League level team? Like they bring back Marsa from the grave. They got Mikji on fucking support. Like not even the best BAP in Finland. You know, like come on, what the fuck are we talking about here? You know, like Cloud on May.
Yeah.
Like okay, Cloud's good to be fair, but if that's the
Fucking
level
joke.
they're at, you have to start questioning the results at that point. I think, you know.
Well, I think even UB said on one of his streams that if they were to replay that final, he doesn't think Saudi Arabia wins. Like he thinks it was very much like everything just happened as it did in the moment, and it's probably not the reliable result if you run at simulation 10 more times, 20 more times.
They did well, right? Of course, but yeah, I don't think they should have won in the end. I mean, the format played a huge role, I think, and it was a really close match, so the format mattered even more.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the teams too that were like participating, basically every roster, maybe not the Finland roster, maybe this is like close to a perfect meta for the Finland roster too, but like, you know, China, Korea, even USA, they had like significantly more robust rosters in terms of hero pool, you know? Like those were teams that could have gone the distance in basically every meta, you know? But that just wasn't the case within KSA, you know? Like they basically had like the ideal opportunity right then and there with like double flex, because you know they don't really have like a particularly strong Lucio player or anything like that. You know, they've got a Mercy one trick reroll to Lucio, so they get like lots of opportunities to play double flex. They get fucking Sigma for KSA. You know, they got the perfect scenario, but there's like 5 perfect scenarios for the other top 3 teams, and just they got the high roll plus the divine intervention buff for like a 1 in 10 finals win when China just like gets reverse swept. You know, they basically got every fucking possible lock roll for the finals, but you know they were still absolutely insane.
Yeah, Blizzard got some oil money for the patch. I think we can all agree. Like it was perfect. Yeah, it was a good patch.
We could all agree on that.
Everyone's on board here. Like, love
Yeah, no
Saudi
problem.
Arabia. Yeah, I think that's what we're saying. Yeah.
we're gonna have to bleep that. Like,
Well, surely the technology's available now. That after this recording, we can just AI Gumba's voice to say,
We all
"I
love
love Saudi
Saudi
Arabia."
we all love Saudi Arabia. You see, copy that twice over. Copy that twice over. Job preserved.
So, if we go back to Florida, one of the interesting decisions, and this is something that not a lot of other coaches had when they had mixed rosters, was when you went from the Season 5 roster to the Season 6 roster, you lost day 1, and then you chose not to take another Korean coach in place, which is really rare, I think, for a lot of these mixed teams. Why get rid of him, and why not replace him with someone who could speak the same language?
Oh, it's because day 1 sucks. No, I'm kidding. He's great, actually. The reason is it's actually literally this simple. I lived with Day 1 for like a year. I still talk to him quite often. Like he's doing really well. I think he coached the second team in Saudi leagues, and like
Yeah.
he's genuinely a really good coach. I'll say that. Like I'm not someone who lies ever, you know. I think he's good, but we literally had to get Chorong to win. Like that, you know, at that time, Merit and Chorong were like fucking angels coming down from heaven to save us. With the amount of options we had at that time, like we were kind of fucked. Like, so getting them was crazy, and we had to do everything we could. I remember even when I said to Albert, like, we can do, you know, I won't say Chorong's salary. It's ridiculous as usual, but we can do this, right? Like if we cut day 1 and all of us take salary cuts and all this shit. And to Albert's credit, he was like, yeah, okay, like that sounds stupid as fuck, but maybe like we'll see. Like, so day 1 got cut just for Chorong, basically. In addition to us taking like $40,000 in cuts as well, which is a decision that obviously I think was good for us, right? I mean, no regrets, but I think making hard decisions like that as well is like another reason why I was successful this year, to be honest. Yeah, no, day 1's really good. I think the question itself was more about like the Korean sort of side of things. Like we already had most of the Korean players at that point for a year, so it wasn't like it was a fresh team. Ham and I'm calling him Ham. I keep saying someone. It's so fucking confusing. Ham and Checkmate spoke like pretty good English, I think, at that point. I think another thing we did that helped a lot is I hate translators. I'm just gonna say it. Like I hate them. Like We've lost Chris. Tragic.
Well, his wife does do translating, so I think it's probably
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't like translation because I think it's a short-term thing. I think it's really good. Like, for example, I was actually using ChatGPT as like a Chinese translator for Shire for the Falcons esports stuff. But that's different because Shire's not going to learn English in two weeks. Yeah, like that's not going to happen. But with our Korean players, we had them for a full year, and I think at that point, like if I had to speak to them in English every day, and like we muddle through with the, like the butchered English, like, hey, you can push here, like this kind of shit, they'll learn English after a period of time, and it'll benefit us in game and out of game, right? So I really don't like translations, and that's why we were able to do it without a Korean coach, is because that was something we always thought. We just didn't rely on translations, and when we did need translations, we had someone do it as much as possible, because that way he could do it in game as well. Like he was practicing for something that was actually useful in game. I think Western teams that rely on translators will always perform worse. Like it makes every conversation so fucking awkward to have like a third fucking wheel in that conversation, just being like, this is what they said, and then the translators always put their own emotions into it. And I've never worked with one who wasn't like that. Like it's unavoidable. I think they put their own like inflection and tone, and it's like impossible to match everything. If that makes sense, it's not like a business meeting where you're describing facts. You're not describing like the quarterly fucking reports. You're talking about Overwatch. It's like super complicated, and then it's like a domain knowledge problem. It's like, how many translators know that much about Overwatch to like get the context right every time? Every translator I've heard, even when they're speaking Korean, I can hear mistakes. Like the ordering was wrong, or like the hero names are wrong, or like they misheard something. It's like it happens all the time. I think so. I don't like translators at all. Not them as people, just I don't like relying on them. I think it makes the team weak.
You would you say that like you ever relied on translation? Say like you had like a big conflict or something like that? Because I mean, you say like you didn't use translation stuff like that. I mean, you had swing chip there, right? So like if you actually needed something like seriously translated, you had that, yeah.
So the biggest thing with translation was ignoring all the bullshit. Like obviously she helped them with flights and like documents they had to fill out. There's a bunch of stuff they have to do, like obligations and stuff like that, explaining what they need to do for content. There are so many things she did do that weren't related to like translating for the game itself. But as you said, like the big conversations, like there were absolutely conversations where I had to sit down with a player and like have like a real heart-to-heart with them, and that wasn't possible in English. We did use translation for that as well. I just didn't want to ever become a part of the daily work, if that makes sense. Like,
no, I agree with that sentiment. Like,
you probably experienced it too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had like both ends of the spectrum. Like on Atlanta Rain, we had a translator who was like, I would say, overly involved in that. We had like active translation for the reviews, and then I think that was like, that was just detrimental to like people's ability to learn English. I think like by the end of the year, Pelican's English was actually pretty good, but we were still translating everything for like basically no reason. Like it was just taking up bonus review time, having Dongman translate everything. But at the same time, I remember there were times throughout the year where it's like, I needed to have like a really serious talk with Edison and stuff like that. Really serious talk with Pelican, like towards the end of the year, and it's like for these moments, like you need a translator. Like it is impossible, genuinely impossible to have this conversation with a Korean player talking through fucking Papago or something, Like I go to Pelican's apartment and I'm sitting on his fucking floor for like 3 hours with Dongman cross-legged in the middle of the night trying to fucking talk through a problem. And it's like, this simply would not have been fucking possible without someone who is fluent in both languages sitting in the middle and mediating the conversation, Just genuinely impossible.
It was interesting because like sometimes during these like heart-to-hearts I was having with these players, at some point, like halfway through it, they would just be like, they would just speak to me in English suddenly. And like, they had that confidence. Like, this is fuck this shit. Like, we both
they snapped out of it. They stopped being French and pretending not to speak the language. Like, they
exactly.
They came out of it. But yeah, and then on Gladiators, obviously, we just didn't have a translator after the first half of the first year. Like around about the time. I think after the first stage, even after the Dallas event, our translators fucking disappeared into the ether, and the org was like, "That's a saving. That's a saving. Let's not replace that guy."
Is this the guy with the COVID tests in the morning? Is that
the guy that tried to actively sabotage our LAN event by
You won in the end, to be fair.
Yeah,
right?
that we did win, but because Blizzard didn't do anything, it was like this was kind of like peak. COVID is just starting to ease up, and Aspen was like a content creator for the org, and she came around, and the day before our first match, it turned out that Aspen had COVID, and our fucking translator, he started freaking out, and he's like, "What if someone on the team has COVID? We all need to get tested repeatedly." So it's like if any of us tested positive for COVID, we were fucking out of the tournament.
Oh, I'm going to be completely honest. Ham had COVID right before the event, and if he didn't get better, we're fucking putting him on the plane. Like, I'm going to be honest. Like, that shit just.
We were at the point where no one fucking cared about COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like it was just over in America. Like we were in fucking America. It wasn't even real there as far as
It was
most
Texas.
Yeah. But it was like if you pop positive for COVID, they were saying you cannot play, right? You need to report that you have COVID and then you can't play because the contingency was like, oh, we haven't actually set anything up yet, but maybe we'll fucking put your whole team in a hotel room in the middle of nowhere. It was like it was fucked, right? Like it was so obvious if you tested positive for COVID, you were in trouble. And then our translator was like, he goes to the tournament organizers, someone at Blizzard, and he says, like, this person might have COVID. Can you make the whole team come in at 8 a.m. every day? Mind you, our showtime was like 11, right?
Yeah.
Can you make the whole team come in 3 hours early to test for COVID every single day from now until the end of the tournament to make sure that nobody has COVID? And it's like, what the fuck? Like, you're just actively trying to screw us. And then he wouldn't come to any more of the practice or anything. He just stopped coming to work because he was scared that one of us had COVID. So he just disappeared. And then after the event, he fucking quit. You know, he was like, I'm really, I can't handle this. You know, it's like,
It doesn't sound like he was mentally well to begin with. In his defense,
yeah, I don't know. I think he wasn't really enjoying himself that year. He wasn't really like fitting in culturally or whatever. But it was just like, what the fuck, dude? I mean,
Which
like,
season was
just
this?
no way that he
5
2022
for Hawaii.
Dallas.
One.
Dallas into Hawaii into.
Oh yeah, we didn't make
it
it to Dallas.
Yeah,
We actually had a really
I've been
similar.
to every single event. I've been to every event for the past 2 years. Super fortunate, honestly. Like, especially with the budgets. Holy shit. We barely made a lot of these events.
scraped your way in at mid-season.
We scraped you out of Korea barely as well by one fight. That was good.
Yep, that was the one. It's okay though.
Oh,
At
that
least
was
it wasn't
mid-season,
Junkie Matter. Yeah, that was mid-season. That would have been really cool.
Kev Strong Reaper. I remember, yeah. Antarctica.
Yep. And there was, I mean, I think it wasn't even like a one map thing, right? Like we still had to play sub level, I think, and you would have just won sub level. Like you were just a better dive team anyway.
Yeah, probably.
It was like a 99-99 fight, but like you had that no matter whether we
felt
won.
Close. It felt close because it was so important. Yeah, like
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
so intense.
The stakes were so high, and everyone thinks about how we lost in that, but it's like people haven't even considered the fact that it was going to go to another Koth point that we were absolutely going to fucking lose. Like it was just not happening.
I think another thing though is when you see the enemy team playing your comp at the very final minute of the match, you're like, that's good. We like to see that. Like, that usually
happy with that.
if you lose that, you kind of it's your fault. Like you lost to a team that didn't practice. Like,
yeah, you see Gladiators in that comp, and it's like, I think Chris is dead. No, I think the death threats actually came in early.
He's been taken down. Well, because he dipped before, but then he was able to re-establish connection. But now he might be.
He's actually been claimed by the Great Firewall this time.
Yeah, for context,
we replaced one coach of the year with the other. So
this is actually what happens to the former coaches of the year, and there's some kind of like passing of the torch ceremony where the older one is killed off.
Well, Gumba's really lucky that Overwatch League ended when it did.
Yeah,
so now he doesn't actually have to pass the torch to anyone, and he can carry that
mine
internally.
Yeah. Just gets
I've
to
got
keep it forever now.
plaque on my wall. Yeah. They sent me like a framed. I'll send a picture at some point, but they sent me like a framed picture with Coach of the Year on it. Everyone else got a trophy, like every other award trophy, big trophy. Me, framed fucking picture, like.
Here he is, back from the dead.
Ooh.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I was here the whole time. I was listening and I was waving, but I guess you couldn't hear or see me.
Yeah, I couldn't see you. Didn't hear you either. You back? You seem back now, though.
Well, I was here in spirit.
All right.
Yeah,
well, we've never been more back.
Effectively, the Great Chinese Firewall is winning the current battle for my internet connection right now, but I'm hopeful that I can switch it around. I switched to mobile data for an hour, but I've ran out of credit because obviously this is quite demanding. So it's now me versus the Chinese government to see if I'm going to be able to finish this podcast or not. But I'm optimistic I can make it work.
The smoothness of the feed isn't filling me with confidence, but go on, Max.
We can hear you.
I was going to say,
as long as we can hear you.
To like circle back to something you were talking about before, like with staff and how you brutally murdered day one with your bare hands. So you decided to keep Gravy. And, I do want to ask, because, I've worked with Gravy in the past when he was a player, and I felt like he was definitely like as dad coachy of a person as you could possibly be, Like I figured as soon as he becomes a coach, he will be the ultimate father figure to anyone, like truly there to like mediate arguments, make people feel good, that sort of stuff. Is that the main reason that you kept Gravy over day one? Is it because like you're Hitler, so you need someone that is like the opposite of Hitler to balance you out and make sure the players are actually happy?
We did a lot of good cop, bad cop stuff. That being said, he's also just a good coach. He was useful because obviously we had to teach Ham a lot of heroes. He was a former tank player, like that helped a lot. You know, he's someone who like has like recent playing experience. He's played a lot of matches. He has like a lot of experience, different metas. He like double shield stuff. I wasn't even coaching during that meta, for example. I was coaching Valorant, obviously. So he just had like a lot of overlap with like things that I didn't know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot from him on that space, and like how to play Sigma, especially. That was a big one. He had like good comp ideas. He was just effective, and that's why I kept him. It wasn't like any one thing, but he did play that role of being like, I think we're both bad cops, to be honest, but he played like more of a slightly less bad cop role, I think, if that makes sense. He was more relatable to the players, I think, which is not hard, obviously, but he took that one. So yeah, I don't know, just effective coach, I think, just good at his job. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Better at his job than day one. You heard it here first, fellas.
Yeah, I think so. But depends on the job. I think Day One's had a lot of success recently with running his own teams, right? We have to give him credit for that. Like Dreamers
Yeah,
and
that's
then
true. Yeah.
GK, he's done really well. Like
Heard a lot of positive feedback about him specifically as well from like the players and from Landon and stuff.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
Is that why? Because McGravy was with you on SRP check as well, right? To a degree. Is that
so I mean, he was coaching Timeless as well as SRP check, and then like the time zones, and he wasn't like around all the time, but yeah, he was like when he could, he showed up and helped. Yeah.
Was that part of the intention then to keep the duo and the balance going in any future team as well?
Yeah, pretty much. If I could, I mean, why not? Like, there's no salary, so there's no cost of having more coaches. Why not have good coaches? You know, if you can get them right. I don't know, just it's always nice to have someone to talk to as well. I think about the game and like how to like get outside of your own perspective as well, because like obviously fighting everyone all the time can be difficult. It can be easy to have someone that you can talk to and be like, okay, am I being reasonable here? Like, you know, to like kind of like sanity check what you're saying and how you're thinking. And Gravy did that as well. So I think that's another thing I look for is having someone like that. I do prefer coaching with an assistant coach. I think that's much easier. Like, it's good to have a player, not a player, but someone who's outside of the playing area of like the game and is objective and can like kind of be direct with you about things that you're doing well or not well. So that's the main reason.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely value in that. You know, whether you're like a head coach or an assistant coach, like having someone outside of that is like actually insanely important, because if it's just like all you and you need to use like the players as your sounding board or whatever for your ideas, or if basically everything goes out unfiltered, I feel like it's either like really easy to lose respect for your players if you ever have a miss, or maybe even worse, to be honest, is like if you're completely candid with the players all of the time, I think you're just like naturally going to destroy your team over the course of the year by articulating everyone's flaws. You know, like it's really important that you don't tell everyone what's wrong with everyone else, because you're just going to turn every player into a toxic piece of shit that just thinks about the weaknesses of other people. Like there's a difference between pointing out, you know, what's going wrong in a review and then talking about how you can fix it, and then being like, Hydron is a fucking choker. Everyone, Hydron chokes in matches. We're going to get.
Why are you going to say like that?
You know, just taking a negative opinion where there's no constructive feedback.
Yeah, no, you're right. 100%. That's something I think about. Like, actually, on Mayhem, we did a really good job of understanding what we were good at. Like, we would have conversations and say, we're good at this hero, we're not that good at this hero. Like, Ham's not that good at D.Va. You know, is there a way to get him off D.Va here? Like, we would have those conversations with the players. But there are absolutely things you cannot talk about with the players. Yeah, and that's one of them. Like, you can't talk about chokers on your team. You can't talk about anything you can't fix, and there's no point bringing up, and there's no alternative. It's like, yeah, this kind of team can't aim. It's like, why would you even say that? Like, so yeah, I think having another coach, like, yeah, because sometimes we would have conversations, you know, like, we'd have conversations where it's like, we can't play this comp because this player is going to lose the 1v1 every time. And we would never have that conversation with the players. So yeah, I do agree completely. Even though you can have a lot of conversations with players, I think we push that more than most teams, especially in terms of like strengths and weaknesses. You know, yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, you need someone else, I think.
One of those ones we felt like we saw from Florida last season was the transition from maybe the mid-season tournament where you guys took the dive mirror, and I think it was it Spark and I forget now, Spark and Houston potentially you lost to in the mid-season. And then
we lost the first one to Spark, and it was because we lost because Rupel's keyboard malfunctioned and he shifted into the enemy team. He has like a Wu-Ting, which is like an incredibly sensitive keyboard. That was like set up incorrectly, and we lost because of that. That's the only reason APAC won a single game at the midseason, is that one mistake. Like, it was that close. I mean, they play well, you know, obviously, but and we lost to Houston, And I think, yeah, did we win every other match? We must have, right? Because it's only 2 matches to lose out. So yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
I
there's
think
the only
we
two
lost
lost,
to those.
yeah.
What was the question?
Sorry, the question then was, the impression is that was at that point you lost the dive mirror, and then in the second half of the season we see you transition to more and more different types of comps where it feels more like you're making your own way in the meta rather than just taking the dive mirror. And that is maybe
Okay,
something...
for what it's worth, though, I think we already had stopped taking the dive mirror as much as possible by that event. I think by that event, we're playing Ram Reaper Moira, which is still a good comp, actually. Dallas came up with it this season, but they couldn't make it work for some reason, and we had made like a lot of success with it. And then the Ram Widow and a Brig comp, the comp where you bait your Ram and your Widow's really far away at the end of Brig. We already had like really solid ideas. And actually, I think that Ram Widow and a Brig idea was actually the meta in the Korean tournament, right? Like, it was the meta on Rialto and like Junkertown, even for like Houston, Atlanta. They copied us by that point. But yeah, we'd already realized at that point kind of that like we couldn't win on dive. And I remember even having like a really emotional conversation with the players where I was like, we don't have to be the best team. We have to be the team that wins the game. And I said that a lot during the season. Like, I said we'll never win on dive. I said it to them. And like, that's all we played. And we had like a good monkey player and and I really think like Merit Sombra was a big reason why, to be honest. But I felt like we could never win on dive. And by that point, we'd already realized that it just wasn't possible to like not play Sombra Tracer on that patch, if that makes sense, right? But yeah, no, we're well aware, I think, of our inability to play that comp. I mean, to be fair, we're like a top 3 or 4 dive team in the world, but that doesn't win you the tournament. I think that's like one of the turning points where we figured out how to win the league. Like that tournament was like one of the big reasons we came up with the mindset of like, let's play something where, you know, if we're right, we win, rather than something where we're just 50-50 against the Lantern on dive and they're better. Like,
well, yeah, it felt like Houston Atlanta always had those top 2 spots, even if you did beat every other team, but ultimately you had to beat those teams if you wanted to win anything.
And this is not something people didn't realize. We should have beaten Houston in that tournament also. Like, if you go back and watch the way we lost Antarctica, they swapped to Monkey on Antarctica on Icebreaker because they had Nano, and he just jumps over the wall and one-shots Merit. Literally blind jumps onto Merit and kills him. It's like, we lost because of that. Like, and then we go into like New Queen Street and we lose. Somehow we lost like a 60-meter lead. Well, we had to take one fight, and we just didn't fight them, and we choked, and the cart walked. You know, like, we should have won that match too, to be honest, even with the strats we had back then. Like, I already think by then we were probably, like, arguably, like, the best team, potentially. Like, we had that, like, clear trajectory. It just took a bit longer for other people to realize, I think. Like, there's a real world where we beat Houston, I think.
Was it difficult for the players? Because the impression we got maybe when we talked to Gator a lot more is that actually a lot of the Korean players want to play the dive comp where they can. It's a decision, obviously, Korea made up the World Cup and Boston made when they played Spark as well in the playoffs. That everyone wants to take the spirit where possible, but you were one of the few teams who had a majority Korean roster who then went a different direction when it came to it.
Yeah, I think it's less about Korean versus Western, though. I think Westerners do the same thing, right? You look at NA Flash Ops, it's all fucking Ram Sojourn, right? It's just, like, it's the same thing. Like, I think players in general want to copy. Because they don't see the macro game enough. Because how can they? They're in the game. It's hard to see. I think only coach-led teams can really push for that like compositional diversity. I don't think it's Korean or Western. And yeah, but absolutely with our team, it was a battle every day to like force them to play comps that they didn't want to play. Like, especially early on. Like, by the end of the season, I think I was really proud. Like, before we flew out to Toronto for the playoffs, I remember having a conversation with the players because we'd already committed to playing Sigma back break, you know, basically the comp that we won the Overwatch League on. And we were losing to Atlanta and Scrims. And we had a conversation with the players, and like, I was so proud because during that conversation, we just said like, hey, like, guys, we're not sure if this is the best comp, but this is the only way we can win. Are we all on the same page here? And all the players are like, yeah, 100%. Like, they had less doubt than me even. And like, to get to that point from like Korea, where it was the opposit, where I was like having a heartfelt moment where I was like, Checkmate, please, like, we can't win on Echo. Like, we have to play something else, you know? Like, we can't win on Sombra Tracer. Like, we just have to find ways to win these games, you know? So that felt really good to get to that point from the starting position of like, yeah, having a full Korean team that didn't want to play anything but Sombra Tracer. Yeah, 100%. Like, we had that team as well. And we, especially because we beat Atlanta and Scrims on Sombra Tracer. Like, again, the scrims don't matter if you choke. It's like choking is one of the biggest problems. And we did on Sombra Tracer every time. And I think playing compositions where we choked less was also a big rule that we had. Like, you'd notice that we didn't play Symmetra, we didn't play Dive. We played compositions that played themselves a bit more, I think, and tried to like solve the game before it was played. So yeah, like all that philosophy coming to a head to win the league was huge. Obviously, it felt really good. Like,
I feel like it's almost impossible to win the Overwatch League if people aren't on like maximum comfort in terms of their heroes. You know, like you look at every team that wins every single year, and like I mean, this year, who's the only person that might be on like slightly uncomfortable hero? It's someone, right? You know, because he's playing. Oh, it's Ham because he's playing Sigma, which arguably, not one of his strongest heroes. But by the end of the year, he was fucking taking over on it, right? McGravy, he's taught him all that he knows or something. Put his shield up before he fluxes whatever the note was, and like Ham's figured it out. But I feel like every year, like you see the team that win, like there's definitely an element of luck in like every Overwatch League season win where it's just like, you rolled the meta where you can play the heroes that you're comfortable with. But I think this year, like at least it was a little bit different in that the meta actually wasn't hard set, Most years it's like a hard set meta and the team that wins, like you can just see it from playing roster roulette when the patch comes out, It's like, oh, this is a fucking Winston Reaper patch. Yeah, Fuel's going to win this one. But this time around, like, people actually had to choose their own comp and play to their own flavor. So I feel like this Overwatch League win is perhaps the least Mickey Mouse in a while in terms of just like gambling. And, it really rewarded the fact that someone could press the H key and change between more than one hero.
I would assert that every meta was actually like this meta. People just didn't have the influence required to push it. Like, I could have pushed different metas last year too, but we were an 8th place team. It's such a hard to sell to the players to be like, hey, everyone's playing this shit. Like the 7 teams that are better than us are all playing Winston carry. I'm like, we can play that. We have the players for it. But you know what? Let's play Rush. Like, or let's play Reaper, or let's play whatever. Like whatever hero you want to say. Like, I think it takes people that have the ability to make the comps and push the team forward. And like, even for Mayhem to be the team they were at the end of the season, we had to build up on those comps over the past 2 years, right? Like we played a lot of Rush. Like we were one of the best, if not the best Ryan team in Scrims, I think, a lot of the time. Like for most of like the years. Like London were better at some points, so depending on which patch, but
it's such a shame that Chris is like timed out right now and he can't just like leap at you and start.
I do remember Hardy saying, I actually watched. I remember Hardy saying they beat us in Scrims on Ryan. That's not true. Like I'm pretty objective. I think that didn't happen. Like,
I mean, they were good. X pulled up the stats on this one.
Wait,
like he had the analysis.
Over the past 2 years, I'm pretty sure we actually beat London pretty often on Ryan. I don't think we would have beat them in a match. To be fair, I think they were better in matches for sure. But like in Scrims, we just like held W super hard and killed them. Like.
I remember this year we played a Torb Bastion mirror Rhine. I feel like that's my.
We got rolled in the Torb. We got rolled by Torb on Shambali before the playoffs. I remember that.
Yeah, it's because our logic was that we didn't play Torb against you before because we always thought Torb was better in the mirror, but we didn't want to tell anybody. But then we got to the point of the scrim where I guess the ego takes over and we're like, we should just do it just to make sure it does work. And then we did it.
Even in that mirror,
and we did it. Like, it felt like. It's not like I don't think we hard rolled by any means, but it definitely felt like we had the edge again.
It was like in the mirror where when Florida was winning, it's like, you guys were just, London was just like permanently on Sim May, like I think they weren't playing the Bastion in the mirror or something.
Yeah, we played
there was like permanently a Sim. Yeah, so like there was just like a completely useless Sim pick in there for the Rhine mirror, but it was like they were playing Sim for practice against counter comps, and then like it was like, oh, Jamie, should we swap it up? And Jamie's like, no, I don't want to show them the Torb.
I do think London was the better Rhine team, but I do think we won in scrims against London more often than they did. Like, I don't know why. We just like played like hard W key every scrim, and we screamed a lot, and I think in scrims that's effective. I'm not sure, but I don't think we would have taken the Rhine mirror in matches ever. Like,
yeah, so when we were in Sim Bastion and scrims, London had a 42% win rate, meaning obviously Florida had the rest. When we swapped to the Torb, which was a notably smaller amount of fights, like 30 odd fights, we were on
Shambhala, I think.
Yeah, we were on like 60% fight win rate.
Yep.
Which is probably why both teams are convinced they had the advantage in the Rhine mirror.
Well, it depends what you're asserting, though, right? It's like, which one's the better Rhine teams? Yes, London. But who won in scrims? 100% we won in scrims. What do you mean? We won like every scrim against everything, except
you would have won more maps technically, but we would have obviously we weren't playing the full version of the comp. We were confident in Silver One. We won.
Why are we even playing Rhine? Like,
you knew you were going to swap to counter Sigma in playoffs. You had it all figured out by then.
No, I knew like what it was good for, but why did we mirror London on Rhine in scrims? I don't know.
Maybe in case London went far in the bracket, you were getting a little bit of practice in because you thought, shit, London are going to do it. Let's get a bit of Rhine v Rhine in just in case.
I think we're trolling. I think we just did it for ego, to be honest. Like
a whole block of just there it goes again.
Yeah.
When you went into that finals, how confident were you that like your power level was we're in like a winnable position?
100%. I think it depends what point you're talking about. Before the finals, we were technically losing to Atlanta in scrims, but we were also picking their maps on purpose. Like we kept picking Saravasa and losing it every day, like every single day. I remember Gay saying something like to the extent of like, oh, like we're beating Florida or whatever. And it's just like actually they kept picking their maps and we kept picking their maps. So the fact that scrims were close wasn't really that relevant. But Atlanta was definitely the team with the highest chance to beat us, I think. And then they just choked against London. Like they just fucking fumbled it. Like against Hungary
Took
too.
care
So
of that one for you.
yeah, the moment we saw them out, we're just like, oh, okay, well, it's fucking over. Like, and then we saw Houston. Like, we had leaks in Houston the whole time, of course, right? We heard they were playing like Doom, and then
Well, they
like,
copied
pivoted
you
to
essentially, didn't they? At a certain point.
yeah, they pivoted to Doom last minute, and then pivoted again after the tournament had started to Sigma. It's just like once you've done that, you've sort of given up the chance of winning. Like, how do you beat the team that already played the comp you're playing for weeks? Like, we came out with Sigma Bastion shit like a month before the tournament, you know, like, and that's what we ended up playing. So I think we just made like a really good bet, and we committed to it, and we said like what is the universe where we win? And it was that one, and we got it right, you know. And like we were happy to get it wrong as well, you know. Like if we got it wrong, it's okay. We're gonna lose anyway. If the meta's fucking Doom Echo, we lose, right? Fuck it, like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this kind of like hedged bet gambling stuff on the meta, it's actually like a big part of why Gladiators did fucking terribly in the 22 playoffs. Because like in the 22 playoffs, we saw this meta with like Winston Reaper, and we were like, oh shit, you know, we don't really have like the ideal roster for this. Like, there's just no way that we can win a grand final on this. We need to see if we can play something else, you know. So it was like we spent weeks trying to like basically do anything other than play Winston Reaper. Like the whole time that Fuel and Shock were just like fucking leveling up their macro constantly in the Winston Reaper matchup. Gladiators was like, yeah, we're playing Hog Tracer right now. I know we're playing Winston Tracer right now. And we're trying Hog again because it feels like Hog could really work. We're trying a little bit of double flex in here, you know, like we were changing everything because there was just like, there was this deeply rooted belief that we couldn't win the Overwatch League if we took the mirror, you know? But at the end of the day, you know, like benefit of hindsight, we just like completely failed to fucking crack the meta. And we would have been better off just grinding out Winston Reaper because then, you know, maybe we wouldn't have been completely embarrassed coming 8th place. You know, maybe we
Would you have won on Winston Reaper though?
I mean, I think if we grinded out the like macro of that comp for like 3 weeks, hopefully we would have gotten further than like London Spitfire into defeat screen, you know, like getting eliminated by Shock. We came 3-1, but like every Winston Reaper match was insanely close, you know, like Shock kind of leveled up throughout the playoffs bracket to get to the grand finals. So I think there's like a pretty reasonable chance that the team got further, but that team was like permanently our team.
I do think that your team won 2 tournaments that season by playing literally your own style, right? Like I remember you played like Doom comps, you played like Ryan comps, you had like these tank swaps.
Our style was so incompatible with Junker Queen and the playoffs meta in terms of like they were pure like hard team play, alt economy, macro based, and the 2 tournaments that we won, it was like let's play fucking deathmatch. Like
no, I understand. I'm saying for me, it's like if you'd gone with the meta and you committed to it, you would have got like fourth instead of 8th. Like I mean,
yeah, I mean,
is that really better? Like fucking yes. Like
yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like it actually doesn't matter, you know, whether we came 4th or 8th, especially as a guy that didn't get incentive prize money throughout the year. So who gives a fuck? But
I got my first prize money this year. Thank God. What a good year.
That's a good thing to negotiate for. I can't lie to you.
And this year it was, yeah, for sure. I mean, fuck.
It definitely it'd probably feel less shit to have come 4th instead of 8th, you know. But at the end of the day, 4th v 8th, like, you know, you didn't win, and if you're not winning, you're losing in this tournament. So
well, I think with your roster, like when we go in as London and we're just mirroring, we're doing the Kiri stuff, and we know we're maybe not going to beat Dallas or we're maybe not going to beat Shock. It's not the end of the world for us in terms of like our expectations. Obviously, if we can win the Overwatch League, fucking fantastic. But it's not a failure if we don't win. So we're quite happy to go the way, but I think like the Gladiators roster, you kind of have, especially for the success you had earlier on, you kind of have to play to win.
Well, that's the thing about the expectations, right? Like if you're one of these big spend rosters, it's not a case of like, all right, guys, let's scrape top 4. It's like, let's win it or we're completely fucking failing, you know? People are like, oh, why did Glads cut Dante in the middle of the year? Fantastic question. But at the same time, you know, when people say, oh, they were doing well, it's like, well, you know, for the Gladiators' expectations for, you know, spend heaps on a roster, not making top 4 is like an unacceptably bad outcome. Just from everyone's perspective, you know, everyone was there to like win it basically, but it was really clear that wasn't an Overwatch League winning roster. But
also, to be fair, I defend Glads as well. Like I thought about this, like how, like because I thought, you know, like I had a lot of respect for Face and you before this year, and now I don't. No, I'm kidding. But
no, it's all gone, man.
I saw that roster and I thought like Glads did really badly, but like how much of that was their fault? Like because I think Probably a lot of it. Obviously it's a lot going on behind the scenes, right? But like
it was actually really fucking impossible for FaZe. I think I said this in a previous episode, but just for clarity for you, it's like Glads didn't get budget for like more than a month after off season started. So by the time Atlanta had made all these moves like pre off season to get lip and then start like verbally signing people, shit like that. Like by the time Glads could give someone money, everyone was fucking signed. The only thing that Glads was capable of doing was a little trade to get Lastro behind the scenes because of some shit where they wanted to offload him, so they were willing to like lock in on that before we had a fucking budget. But Glads got budget so late into the off season that it was basically impossible to lock anyone down on an offer because we didn't know how much money we had to spend. Or,
I felt like from my perspective, it's like Dante made so much sense because the meta was Winston Carey before, and it's like what are the odds it's Winston again? Like they're not going to nerf this shit. Like it seems like we get nerfed. And it did. Carey got nerfed, right? Winston didn't get nerfed, I think, but you rolled low on the meta, and that's just like you're halfway into the season, and you're like, holy shit, Winston's still fucking meta. Like it's hard meta. Like what do we do? Like, okay, let's get a monkey player, and that's just like not a Winston meta. It's just like it's pretty unlucky, I think, in hindsight. I think like players like Yaki being as bad as he is, I think that's not to bring it back to the Yaki bashing, but that surprised me. That surprised me too, right? Like the reason we talk about him so much is because we expected so much more, I think, based on his reputation. The rest of the roster on paper looked good. Lastro, fucking funny Astro. Like, I don't know. I think Glad's probably fucked up a lot, and the org probably fucked up a lot. But there was an element of bad luck there, I think, for real. Like, it was pretty unfortunate the way the meta went for that team. I think
the second half of the year had it been a cut Yaki keep Dante situation, the second half of the year would have actually been really good. Because I think if that had happened, Lastro wouldn't have even left. Because Lastro actually quite liked Dante.
That was the big mistake. I couldn't understand that one. That was obvious.
Do you mean Dante or Lastro?
Cutting Yaki to get.
Oh right, because that's what should have happened. Like it was really clear that Yaki just sucked. But he sucked. But was kept for whatever reason. I guess like this perception of like Kai's inflexibility. But it's like you looked at Mayhem results, and it's like maybe Kai wasn't playing to the same level as Merit, but I felt like that was the template team. That was the really obvious template.
We were a hit scan team.
It's like it's like you've got a main DPS player that has skill, and you have a really flexible flex DPS player. It's like we were the same fucking team. We would just lose to you in the head-to-head. So it's like let's just keep copying that. Already by mid-season, Faith was so low in Yaki. It's like I just don't understand the reasoning for keeping him because it's like if we already know his shit, what's he doing there eating up the budget? I don't get it.
He like almost twice as expensive as Dante as well. Like it's made no fucking sense. You could have got two players for the price of one there. Like I don't know.
Maybe he had like some crazy, like, if I get cut, I get a huge payout thing or something. Maybe he negotiated a good termination clause or something. I refuse to believe that. The words have come out of my mouth and then I just realized I said that Yaki negotiated something. Yeah, no, I take it back.
Chris, are you with us?
I see a loading screen for Chris.
He's trying so hard, dude.
I mean, he's been shouting about London winning the Rhine Mirror versus Florida for the past 25 minutes.
Listen, if Florida lost the Rhine Mirror, say something. I don't know shit.
Welcome back. We fixed our technical issues. You might be wondering why Chris has changed into his jersey and is going to be constantly thinking now for the remaining part of this podcast, but it's because the Great Firewall of China has not let him through. So we can get voice, but we can't get picture. So we'll make it work.
The Chinese government was one battle I couldn't win, unfortunately. They were slightly too powerful than me and my iPad, so here we are.
Well, you were bragging about all those Mexican standoffs you won last week, about how you held on against Team Holland, you held on against Changoon, but the Chinese government won too far.
No, they got me, unfortunately.
All right, so we've talked quite a lot about Florida and all the success. Should we travel back a bit in time and talk about how we got to the point where you were Coach of the Year? Because you actually started right at the start of Overwatch League. And was this also your first coaching job, technically?
Oh, you mean, yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I went from being a player to coaching Valiant, and I was very lucky to get that job. Like, I applied to Cuddles, the manager at the time, and they had no coach, and they had budget for one, and he showed me like their contenders VOD and said, give me a document on what we could have done better in this contenders match. It was like the Immortals contenders right before Overwatch League that they won, I think. And I gave them like a fucking 10-page document flaming every player and like everything they could have done better. And I'm guessing the bar was pretty low back then, so I got in and got flown out to LA and the new Models compound with Noah Winston and all that shit. Right after the LCS whole thing, LCS failed for Models. They couldn't get a spot, unfortunately, in franchising. So Overwatch was like their baby at that time, and they were really serious about it. And like we were like the only team that had like a facility. For some reason, everyone else went to like the Burbank Arena. I'm not sure if you guys. I think Chris would have been there for that for sure, but
I wasn't there in season 1, but I think Fusion had a house, but also like at least in the first half, everyone had this idea that going to the Burbank studio was like optimal. But I've literally no idea why everyone was like so on this. Let's go work with the other teams in this arena. But I feel like so many of the ways that we started Overwatch League, like the ideas were so fucking cooked. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, everyone had no experience. Most people hadn't had a job before the Overwatch League at that time. So, but for some reason, we ended up being the only team not going to the Burbank Arena, and we had like our own little facility. It was like a fucking in the middle of nowhere in Culver City. But yeah, it was a really good experience. The day I got there, I had like a meeting with Noah Winston. He was just like, "I want you to never talk to players again." I'm like, "Okay, what the fuck? All right." And so, of course, I talked to players the whole season, so I just ignored them. But
really hard to do your
You
job
never took
without
you
doing
in and
that.
out on camera?
No, unfortunately, I was actually the reason, not the reason, but like our coaching decisions at that time put agilities in that car. You know, let's put it that way. Like, it's not how we want to handle that conversation, but yeah, no, I was there for that for sure. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks for bringing that to the audience. You know, that was really entertaining, like as a season 1 L fan.
Well, it's because we had this guy, JMR Luna. He ended up being like the CEO of OG or some shit. I don't remember, but great like content creator guy. He created some amazing content for sure. Like probably the best content guy I've worked with ever. But everything that season was recorded, which is kind of surreal to think about in hindsight. We had like cameras in every dugout, like every coaching moment, every speech. You can go back and watch them right now. You can watch season 1 Valiant, like me and Moon, and like Damon and Stoop and all that shit. So yeah, it was a really weird experience. It was such like a big spectacle at that time, I think, and like the hopes were so high that people were like, we have to get behind the scenes camera crew, we have to have our own facility, we have to do all this stuff. And over the years, it just got shittier and shittier. I remember like Soon saying something to me that was really funny. Like after we won like stage 4, and we were like probably the best team in the league in season 1 until like the very end where we kind of choked. I remember Soon saying, "Oh, now we win, now we get more money." It's just like, oh, if only you knew, bud. Like, yeah.
It's funny because like Toronto Defiant continued to do that all the way through to this season. Like they did it, like you can see these. I think it's called like Source Code is the series. And it's like, I'm looking at it now on YouTube. It's like, bro, these videos have 1K views. These are like really high production, quality. Like you can actually see like the mid-match speeches. You can see dugout footage. You can see it all, and nobody fucking watches it. It's like Uncoachable is 10xing.
Also, the content just made them look so shit. Like after they lost Coolidge is like, guys, why are we joking? It's like, what the fuck? Shut up, idiot! Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're useless. Like, why are you saying that shit? You can't say that. Like,
and then Hydron starts.
Yeah, no, but you can see why that team was so unsuccessful. You can see it like from those videos. It was fucking ridiculous. Like the way they talked and like how they analyzed their losses was just so like caveman. It was fucked. Like nothing useful was being said. It was just like typical like loser behavior, I think. I saw like one clip from that I'll never forget. I fucking made fun of them in the scrim after I saw it. It was like Kasaurus was like, Wheats had a really good idea. He was like, what if we show them clips of all their highlights so we can motivate them to being good again? I was like, what the fuck, dude? Tell them why they suck. Like, oh man, those videos are so much fun to watch, I think. But yeah, no, watch them, which is a shame.
If you ever beat Toronto, then watch the video afterwards. It's obviously like a really good watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the Agilities video that has like 100K, and that spawned spin-offs. But now Toronto getting a crushing defeat, and it's actually fucking hilarious to watch.
It was so funny, like
1K.
Watching like how they handled losing, where it was just like it was kind of PMA almost. Like it was like hands off, like guys, why are we choking? We just need to close out these games. Let's try and get the guys back in the game. And like meanwhile at Mayhem, it's just like, what the fuck are we doing, dude? Like it's so shit. Like.
To be fair, we're talking about American Tornado here, Like it was actually not possible to be a harsh coach for American Tornado. I think like if you signed up to coach that Toronto Defiant roster this year, even you being literally Hitler, respectfully, like you wouldn't be harsh with those guys because like there's just no fucking way. Like everyone knew going into the offseason, like someone was going to sign this team. Some unlucky motherfucker was going to be the head coach of American Tornado, and it was just like it was a question of like how do you manage all that personality?
Kasaurus choose that team.
Yeah.
He probably chose the roster, but it was just like he must have wanted to coach a Western team from the onset. It's like I remember I interviewed for Boston, and the first question was like, "Do you want to coach AT? Like we've got budget constraints. We can get all of them. Like, do you want to do them?" And it's like, nah, I don't think so. Like it's it's like I said, it's like I think what I actually said was like I'd actually be happy to coach AT, but I hope your expectation isn't that I'm actually coaching them very much, because I feel like those guys would be so difficult to actually like tell what to do.
Dude, I don't feel bad for AT. I think that's the wrong way to frame it, like, because it's their fault. But like, I feel it's a shame almost. Like, if you just took everyone on that team and you split them up, I think half of them would have been successful. I think we saw that in season.
It happened in 22.
Yeah, exactly. We saw this happen. Like
Kaluge, Reiner, they had like massive success. Like,
they're like, if we combine powers, it's like, no, stop
separate powers.
Because some of them are shit too. Like, I think some of them are really good and like have like a lot of potential, and then, but they're like tied at the hip to these fucking losers, and it's just like, like it's such a waste. I think Hydron was like playing his best after he left Florida, like directly afterwards. I think that was true for Kaluge as well. I don't know. I think them splitting up was the best thing that ever happened to them, and like, not even arguably, I think it was like the highest peak in all of their careers. It's the friendship. It's not the power of friendship. It's the opposite. Like, it's the weakness of friendship. Like, they need to be split up all the time, I think.
I mean, I do think that, like, to their credit, they're actually like really good at like solving problems internally. I wouldn't say that they reach the perfect solution every time, but these guys, like, they flame the fuck out of each other all the time, and it's constructive. Like, it's genuinely constructive. They reach like heaps of solutions by watching each other's povs together. Like, they sit in screen share and fucking bully each other, and they actually figure it out. Like, you've got players that maybe it's difficult to sit down as a coach and give them feedback, but they respect one another. So if they all sit down and they watch it, they solve it. Like, at the end of the day, a coach, it's not just about being right about every fucking situation. Sure helps, not looking at anyone in particular in the call, but like, if they sit down and they watch the VOD and there's like 5 players that aren't completely fucking brain damaged, they will solve it. They will figure it out if they watch it. And these guys, they sit down and they watch it. They actually make it happen. They work hard. They all play the game a fuck ton. I think, like this year's AT roster, it's like, I mean, Speedly just quit the game at the start of the year. That definitely didn't help them. They got meta fucked too. Like, they had a Sombra Tracer meta, and it's just like the worst Sombra Tracer team you could ask for, Like, Hydron, Speedly, Sam as your DPS line for a hard Sombra Tracer Winston meta. Like, they would have looked significantly better in a lot of other metas, Like, when they were a tier 2 team and they were coming up to tier 1, like, they had insane metas where Speedly had like heaps of skill expression on Echo and Doomfist, like actually fucking crazy at those heroes. Kaluge, he could play Sigma, stuff like that. They just got fucked on meta in the first half of the year, and the power of friendship died by then.
Okay, I'd raise 2 disagreements there, though. I think one is, firstly, they just had a Ram Sojourn meta where they choked again, right? That just happened, right?
Yep.
They choked to a team that was actively trying to throw, too. Like, Hawk on Queen was not...
Just giving it away.
Literally zinting every fucking time. I think they choked several leads. So, firstly, I think we've seen them play a meta that, on paper, should be better for them. But my question is, like, are the AT players even synergistic in the first place? Like, is Hydra and Kaluja a good combination of players? A tank who like doesn't lead and plays really slow, and a guy who doesn't play well on hard hits against heroes. Is this like a good? Should they even be playing together anyway? Is this even good roster building? It's like they might have like the power of friendship behind the scenes, and they might be able to like solve these problems in those reviews, but they can't solve who they are. Like
yeah. I'm not trying to say they're goated. I'm not trying to say that.
No, of course.
I'm just trying to say that, like, there's some merit to what they do. Like, they actually do figure it out. They're not dog shit, right? Even if their results in Overwatch League have been pretty like consistently average when they were together. I just think that there's something to be said for their system. I just I probably wouldn't want to be the head coach of it all, trying to tell them what to do, because it's like that's their job to tell each other what to do.
To their credit, who's to say they're in the wrong anyway? Like, it depends on your goals. Like, if their goal is to win the Overwatch League, they're in the wrong. But at the end of the day, they got to play Overwatch with their friends for 2 years and like get paid a bunch of money to do it. And they're still playing with their friends, and there's something to be said about that. Like, if they're enjoying their time, I think you could argue that a lot of us didn't enjoy our time in the Overwatch League a lot of the time, right? Like, it was really stressful and like hard, and like you had to fight people every day, to win games. And like,
yeah,
maybe their experience was better as a result of the decisions they made. Maybe they're not in the wrong in that way. But it is a shame to see players that maybe could have accomplished more competitively not do that. And that's only because I care about that more than most people. I care about the competitive side, right? So
yeah, I guess that's reasonable. I do think that their goal is to win at the end of the day. Like, no one, even if you're playing with your friends, no one's truly happy losing all the time. So it's kind of just like, sucks to suck.
It feels like they have like half really good players and half like not as good players. And what like Toronto did at the end, where they added like Koreans into that like core of like Hydra and UV and Kaluge, looks a pretty competitive team. I guess the problem Kastoris had at the start of the season is like, if you either get 0 AT players or you get all of them, can you build a better Western team getting none of them? You know, I feel like that was the dilemma that he had to have.
I don't know. That's tough.
I feel like
I'm not
you
sure if
need
they could have
some of
built
them.
that team. 100%. Yeah, it's like, who would you replace on an AT roster with Westerners? Like, yeah, obviously like Vega or something. I mean, but they couldn't sign him anyway.
Yeah, he
like,
wasn't even attainable.
The problem is, for players you would want would be like Hawk and RuPaul, which just aren't realistic players to sign in that
I think
season.
UV at the start of this season was a better pickup than RuPaul on paper. Like, I don't think that's the decision they could have possibly made. So I think
it's Seeker, right? Like Seeker.
Yeah, I was thinking
Hydron.
Seeker as well. Yeah,
because
but even then, that's only Sojourn. That's not like Seeker's better at Sojourn. Like, that's not.
Yeah, Hydron. He probably blows him out of the water on a lot of heroes. To be honest,
Look for Kaluj, I think.
you think, but this guy's locked down. Hawk was on like an absolutely like you're never getting him out of Atlanta type situation.
Yeah, right.
Same thing with RuPaul too. It's like even if you did have that mindset, like you were never getting RuPaul off your team because you had faith in him and he was cheap as fuck. So like he's integral to the fact that you guys are a budget roster.
But
like,
then going for Western's just a mistake at that point.
But how can you
work.
not go for Western if you're I mean, I guess I'm looking at the guy that just coached 4 Koreans to win the Overwatch League. I was going to say, how do you build a Korean roster as a Western coach? But I'm looking at that guy. And,
Also, I mean, they could have a couple of Koreans, right? It's easier. Spectre speaks perfect English, like.
Yeah. I mean, the mixed roster that he turned out with, it probably worked out better for them, right?
They probably make playoffs if that roster's there from the start.
Yeah.
Open is a miss, but yeah, like the concept.
What do you mean?
Better,
He was
right?
defending Open as Brig like it was the greatest thing ever. Even the only thing I can ever remember Open as Brig doing was bashing off the map.
I mean, he has an opinion. That's fine. I mean,
it's okay to be wrong, like it's totally fine.
Only 60% of the time you can be right, so 40% of the time you sign opener.
we signed Marjed, so.
Oh.
Let's unpack that a little bit more.
There's a quiz at the end.
There's a quiz.
All right, we're going to have to redo the quiz, Chrissy. You can go silent for a couple of minutes as you try and bait him into flaming Marjed in the quiz.
No, literally already way ahead of you. The quiz will involve flaming Marjed.
Quiz has some good. He's done well, I think. But
Yeah.
to be fair, I want to say for that quiz, the subtext is that Chris picked these people. So just keep that in mind.
Just wait. There's a special edition of the quiz if the Chinese firewall allows me to get that far.
Just when I'm burning bridges at the end of the quiz, make sure you're thinking about the fact that Chris also picked those people. Like,
Yeah. 50% of the responsibility is on me.
Does this mean that I could be like a soft victor here? It's like you guys burn all your bridges and I'm left with like some tiny little rope bridge to kind of tiptoe across.
I guess I have to predict who I think is a fraud. So
Okay.
everyone's going in the trash, I think.
Well, I imagine most of the answers will be he thinks both of them are a fraud.
Well, yeah. You'll see, guys. Let's not spoil the quiz.
Okay.
Let's
I'll go
talk
too
about-
far. Yeah, anyway, yeah.
So I guess maybe on the point of like obviously you working with a Major League Korean roster, were you just picking the players you thought were best? Was there ever any real conscious decision of like I need to at least have one Western player or I need to make sure I keep RuPaul or find?
We seriously considered going full Korean this year.
It was just
And decided
who was
against it.
best.
Yeah. Honestly, like the Korean players are just better most of the time. They're less arrogant. They have way better experience in the tier 2 scene. They're more talented. I think talent's a simple measurement. Like I think people don't really realize this, but there's just more competitive players in Korea than NA, which is kind of weird to think about because Korea is such a small nation. It always seems like an overperformance that Korea is so strong in Overwatch and like League and the games where they're successful. But it's not an overperformance at all. Like obviously there's a cultural element that helps, but they literally just have more people playing the game competitively. They have more people trying to do that than other countries, right? Like Korea is a bigger country than NA in that context, and Europe, right? And we saw that with the World Cup. If you look at the, I don't know if you guys remember, they used to show the SR ratings for the World Cup to rank the countries, like seed them for like the first few years of the World Cup. And China and Korea had the highest average SR of any country. And they also only played each other. How's that possible? It's because when you have a larger region, the average SR is also increased. It's like an inflation problem. It's like, so at that moment I realized that like Korea was always going to be better. And like, if you think you're going to make a Western team that competes with a Korean team, you're out of your fucking mind. This is math. You're never going to do it. Like it requires such luck and like the perfect circumstances and the Korean team to choke and like all these things. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. What was the question? Fuck.
The question was
Slipped away from
about
Sol.
the question was more about if it was intentional to have like a Western player on the team, or if you were happy to. Have
Oh,
Korean,
okay.
but yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely not. I mean, didn't care at all. Just the best player we could get for each role, right? We were considering Chase Torch. I think you guys are familiar with Chase Torch in the first, like in the tryouts for 2022, like almost 2 years ago now, right? We were happy to go with him. I still think he's really good.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think we're both big Chase Torch fans. But no one's ever heard of this fucking guy, by the way. Like, viewers
No
like, who
trade
the
heads here.
fuck? This guy is playing in fucking flash ops during the Ukrainian war. Like, you know, like Jesus Christ. But we have to go with him, and then we saw someone easy pickup. We had like Checkmate and Sam in the tryouts in 2022, and Checkmate dropped like 35 kills on Sam. And we're just like, okay, well, fuck, you know, like what are we gonna do here? Like, yeah, we had like a list of every flex DPS we were happy with, and at that point it was just Checkmate, and then we heard like, oh, Shock's looking at trying out Checkmate, and we're like, fuck, you know, like this is a make or break moment, so we threw the bag at Checkmate. Ended up paying him like 3 times as much as he got paid on the contract he was on literally the year before with Mayhem that got dropped, unfortunately. But yeah, no, happy to go full Korean if that was the move. Obviously, I sometimes think to myself like maybe I'll get fired, you know, maybe like they'll overthrow me, yeah. But I just ignore that.
Was there a point it was close? Because I remember I was talking to you before mid-season, and I remember you telling us like, oh, I think that the players really want to play dive, and that you were having to like strong arm them. I think you guys already spoke about it in the pod, but do you think there was ever a time where the Korean Mafia was on its way, like you were dangling over a bridge?
This year, no. Last year, actually, it
Western
wasn't.
Mafia, actually.
It was the Western Mafia. Yeah, it was. I think like mainly. Yeah, it's a bit blurry. I mean, they all got drunk together and hung out at night, so maybe they had like. Maybe everyone had a say. I know even this year, Ham wanted 9K, which I told Albert, like, because Albert told me that. I was like, yeah, I agree. Fuck, dude. 9K's great. Like, yeah, fuck yeah, sign him up. Like, of course, 9K didn't want to join, so that's why we won the league. But there was absolutely a moment where the Western players, like specifically, I would blame Hydron and Majid, tried to get me kicked last year in 2022, because yeah, we're going through a bunch of compositional problems at that time, and like I was trying to put like Majid on Lucio, which they didn't like, and maybe that was a bad decision, right? I'm out of focus. What the fuck? Hello. All right.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Unlike Chris, yeah. But they absolutely, I think all the players got together, and I think like some of them were kind of like most of the players were not most, but like half the players were kind of on the fence, or like yeah, either way is fine, and then half of them were like, let's get rid of Gunba, right? And Albert just told them to go fuck off, right? Good decision by him, I think. Very hard decision to make as a GM. I have a lot of respect for him for that one. Like, I think almost every GM in the league kicks me at that moment, and we don't end up with this winning team. So absolutely, almost got fired. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it felt like conversations I had with Albert seemed like he realized that you were the key to winning for his team, and had to, on numerous occasions, explain to players, yeah, okay, but you want to win, right? And I feel like he was the number one Gunba head from day one, which I think allowed you. You see, even in traditional sports, once the players say that they don't want to coach anymore, you're absolutely fucked. Like there's almost no way to come back from it.
Cut the players.
I think at the end there was a realization of the reality of like why I had my job. You know, it took a while, but they saw it in the end. Like
they came to GumbaCon in the end.
Yeah, most of them I did. Yeah, I think. I mean, Ham came back to me and messaged me for like feedback on like how to play this meta, like literally 2 weeks ago. You know, like I don't think there's bad blood there with, especially the players in season 2. Not that that's an accomplishment. You know, we won the league, so I mean, it's if you can't build a positive relationship after that. Yeah, it's like winning of winning situations, right? Like it's not really an accomplishment. And
what about the ones that tried to kill you? Like, did you ever get Marjad messaging you for a little bit of cheeky feedback? You know, after he.
Yeah, I really don't like that actually. That Marjad did that, like, because he tried to get me fired, and then like, I know he was like messaging people in this chat about me actually. I won't like go into specifics. I'm not throwing you under the bus, like if you care about that, but
it was me.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, but he was going out of his way to like shit talk me and stuff, and you know, Marge is one of those people. I think when he sees you as like not useful, he kind of throws you under the bus. He's like someone who uses people, I think. And so like the moment he gets signed to Toronto, he's like suddenly Florida's like beneath him, and then when Toronto's shit, suddenly this guy shows up in our fucking practice room in Toronto, and it's just like, dude, like I don't know. Yeah, I really don't respect that shit at all. I think that shit's pathetic. Like, yeah.
it's a dangerous bridge to burn. It's one that we've attempted the Saudi Arabian bridge in general. We've attempted to keep it open, but that's where you go where no man's brave enough to go.
Firstly, there's nothing they can say on Twitter that I'm going to care about, first of all. Like, that's the first issue. But I don't hate Saudi Arabia at all. Like, I had, like, a pretty good experience working with Falcons, right? Like, that was fine. I worked with Saudi players then. It was great. I don't think Saudis are a homogenous borg of, like, people who all think the same way, you know? Like, I think there are different Saudis with different personalities. I think a lot of Saudi players I've talked to didn't like Majid, you know? So from my point of view, like, I don't worry about that. And if they do hate me or something, or, like, Saudi hates me, it's fine. You know? You can't worry about people who think wrong. You know, like, the facts are what they are. So,
yeah, I mean, I think if there's one thing that you've made abundantly clear throughout the course of this podcast and throughout the course of your entire career, you don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about you. So, you know, picking another nation for you to not care what they think about you, you know, at the end of the day, that's just you.
If people want to win, they'll work with me, right? Like, you know, at the end of the day, like, it's not like the players who are already winning come to talk to me and say, "Hey, can you coach us?" It's the players who are going to lose and, like, they're sick of losing, right? And that's going to be true no matter what they think. So.
And then you won't sign them to the roster because you've already Control-A deleted them from the spreadsheet.
They're too old, yeah.
Yep.
Is that something that's always been true then? Like, when you were an assistant coach and you didn't have the ability to be in charge of everything, was it the same kind of style of coach and the same type of personality, or even back when you were a player as well?
Yeah, as well. Yeah, both. When I was assistant coach for Valiant, Boston, and then Valiant again, and with Packing and Moon, and I was a huge part of the strategy, right? And you can see that when, like, the budget cuts came to Valiant, they fired every other coach. They fired Reprise and Stoop, even though I was there later. I'm always a big part of every team I'm on. I try and be, like, super involved and, like, super demanding and, like, push the players and, like, constantly talk about the game and, like, you know, never give up. I gave up in season 2, actually. It's like the only time in my career
the
I've ever
Boston
given up.
season.
Like, yeah. I couldn't see how to make it work. It was like a democracy, like the coaching staff. It was really bad. It was just awful. And the players were bad too. Like, I didn't really get, like, enough roster building input because I joined kind of late and I gave up. And, like, even though I don't think that was going to be a good season either way, I really regret that. Like, and I've never given up since. Like, that was a big learning moment for me, I think. Something like, yeah, I'm lucky to get that chance too, right? I think, like, most people who give up and fuck up a season just don't get back into the league. Right? Especially as a coach, you're not really, like, when you're a player, you have, like, your highlights that you can say, "Hey, look, I was really good at this." Like, as a coach, it's kind of, you know, not like that. So I was lucky to have, like, a relationship with Packing and, like, help Packing get the head coach job on Valiant, and had, like, a relationship with Mike and Stoop and all the people over at Valiant. And I was able to get back into the league that way. So yeah, that relationship really helped.
Oh, so thankful you got a job at Valiant too.
Yeah, because I got Unter into the league as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who in this call hasn't got an Unter a job? Anyone?
Has Chris got me a job before? No.
Well, you didn't get paid, I guess, but you got a free trip last season.
In the comp closet and stuff.
I got my own Atlanta job was the thing. You know how you were like, you know, the bar was really low because you sent a bunch of feedback to someone and they gave you a job for it. When Valiant fired me after 2020, I had no connections anymore. I'd tapped the Australian well, and I didn't have any international friends yet because I was a remote coach on Los Angeles Valiant. So I actually had to do something myself then, and that was when I just came. I asked every GM, you know, for the love of God, anyone got a job? Everyone was like, "No, go fuck yourself," or just didn't reply. But you know, Sefi, the charitable soul that he is, he was like, "No job." And I was like, "You got any VODs that I can see? Just for a bit of professional development, we'll call it." He sent me a VOD. I sent him a bunch of feedback for all of his players, completely unsolicited. And I was like, "Can I have another VOD?" And he's like, "Yeah, right, sure." And I sent him more unsolicited feedback, and he was like, "Do you want, like, a really low-paying remote job?" And I was like, Do I ever? And
How much was it?
Yeah, I can say it now. It was $30K at Atlanta it was $30K to come second in the Overwatch League, but it kind of, like, snowballed throughout the course of the year in terms of what they provided me. You know, they provided me with significantly more than $30K by the end of the year in terms of value. You know, like, because it stopped being a purely remote job. They liked what I was doing in the online space, and they were like, "You can come to America." So they paid for my visa, my travel. They paid for my travel home during COVID, mind you, during peak COVID. So the flights were like, this is like $20,000 in flights, probably like a very expensive and expedited visa. Like $5,000 in hotel quarantine in Australia. And Brad Sefi, so this wasn't org, but this was Sefi. Sefi let me live with him and his wife in Atlanta. So, like, in terms of what the org provided me, they provided me with heaps because they flew me out in the middle of fucking COVID, the most ridiculously expensive time to hire someone ever. And then on top of that, Cephii provided me with heaps individually. By initially going out on a limb to get me the job, the cunt probably took a pay cut to do it because he does that to everyone. He's such a nice guy. And then
he's loaded, to be fair, though.
Yeah, but you know, still, it's you know, a dollar's a dollar.
Definitely, yeah. He gave you his time.
And then he gave me his time, and then he let me live with him and his wife. So you know, he really went out on a limb. But that's the only job I've ever earned. Every other job has just been like, oh, an Australian guy knows me.
No, Cephie's a great guy, 100%. Like,
yeah. But yeah, thanks for getting on Valiant. Appreciate that.
Yeah, why did you get on the Valiant?
Because
you left.
Packy really liked the low filter Australian guy that he had. And
no, but I got you the job. Why was there a gap in the roster?
Isn't this when you went to go coach Valorant? Didn't you and Packin both move to the Valorant team, and then it was a gap, and then Unter became the gap filler?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I had to replace myself to make them confident that I could go to Valorant. I think that was a big part of it. Like, I also started sandbagging Scrims super hard at that time. Actually, in hindsight, like, I stopped watching and just like I only wanted to think about Valorant at that time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for lowering the expectations because that really helped me slide in perfectly, you know? Like someone that doesn't watch the Scrims and me. Perfect. Like, wow, you really are a lot like Gunba now that you know.
Why did you choose to go to Valorant when you did? Was it just you thought it was the new wave, like a trending up game rather than a trending down game?
The context at that time was like, if you remember, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the COVID season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I misremembering? I think it was like literally that season.
Yeah. It was 2020.
And I remember, dude, fucking Mike was saying some shit like, "We can't go to China, guys. We're gonna forfeit every Chinese match." I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" First of all, and I went like helped him like figure out like I started researching all the hotels and like we found like we saw like a gaming cafe in China and we had like this whole thing ready for like the gaming in China homestand thing that was going on, right? And then it all gets shelved, it all gets cancelled, and it's just like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, we're playing online for the whole year, like. And then Valorant comes out. It's like this fucking shining beacon just flying down from the heavens, like this whole new game run by Riot, who are like not incompetent like other companies. And yeah, well, we're starting to think, oh shit, like this could be really big. And I full sent on. Immortal said they were getting a team, and I just like full sent on this opportunity without really any regard for like, you know, if I would like Valorant or anything like that. I was just like, this has to be, you know, it's a game with abilities. There's something there, you know, like CS players don't really know how to deal with that. They didn't, you know. And I developed like the computer vision stuff, like the machine learning, like stat stuff. For Valorant too, we did the open tryouts and it went really, really well. We like got to like second or first in America at some point. So it was just like, it just made sense, I think. There was just too many things pointing in that direction. Like Overwatch being really shit and Valorant being like really good.
Why did you then ultimately make the decision then to come back?
I started to get pushback from the org on what I wanted to do, because at that time in Valorant, our salaries for Immortals were like $5,000 a month or less, with like really no other benefits in the contracts whatsoever. They didn't want to like have a team house in Texas, which is a normal thing in Valorant because of the servers. That ping's really important in that game. Our salaries were like shit and like falling behind, and we literally had that like IGL Nature at one point just say like, I refuse to play, and it's like, well, why? And it's like, well, GNG is offering me more money. And it's just like, what the fuck? Like contracts just don't matter, you know? Like, so I want to like hard pivot to this like selling players kind of idea, which was going really well. We sold like Asna to 100 Thieves for like a lot of money. We sold Dicey as well. Some other players I think we sold. I want to like keep iterating on like the rosters, and at some point the org was just like, no, we need stability. Like people think we're unstable. Like this is some dumb bullshit. And we had like a losing roster at that time. But the moment they said that, we had like a really losing roster that would never win, I thought. And even then I wanted to get players that now I think people look at as like top Valorant players, like Zekken, for example. Like Zekken was just right there for the taking. We wanted him. Like Def is like an IGL. Like all these players, I don't know if you guys follow Valorant, but we're like literally like this like one set of decisions away from getting like the next like crop of talent from NA that could possibly win, and went on to win many games. And the org was just like, no. And it's just like, okay, like fuck this. Like, dude, I'm out. Like, and then Albert messaged me. Albert had been trying to get me for like years at that point. And I went back to Overwatch. Like, that was it. Only had one offer. I think Face messaged me after I took the Mayhem offer and said, like, why'd you do that? Like, why'd you take that deal? Like, I was like, fuck it. And Albert was really honest with me too. Like, the first call I had with Albert was like, we're not going to have any money. You know, this is like a budget team. You know, I was like, great, that's fine. You know, I'm okay with that. So Albert was like really supportive, and it made sense when I went to Valorant. It made sense when I left Valorant, if that makes sense. Like it lined up really, really well.
That's so funny because Face messages you. You would have gone to Gladiators otherwise. I would have stayed on Atlanta, because I'm the Gunga at home, or multiple homes back.
Is that what Face wanted? He wanted me as assistant coach?
I don't know, but I mean, if he's messaging you that, I presume so, right? I'm like.
I think it was more about the quality of the offer, but maybe I'm not sure.
I mean, because I remember interviewing for that same job, right? And it was like, it felt like Albert was, trying to gauge how interested I was, and he kind of brought up, what's your biggest priority? And I was like, I just want to win, I just come off a year where I pocketed 30K working with Atlanta, and I had so much fun, and it was holy shit, dude. I actually just don't care how much these people pay me. I just want to win and have fun. And I felt like there was no better place to do that than Atlanta until Glads came in with an insane roster and insane money to double it up. And it was wow, I could win, have fun, and earn fuck tons of money. Goodbye, Atlanta Reign. Thanks, guys.
Nobody's fumbled more bags than me, I think, because when I went to Boston season 2, literally months into that season, I got a message from Valiant saying, we want to kick Moon. Can you come back and head coach? And it's no, obviously I'm not going to do that. And then later going back to Valiant, I think I got a message from Krusty or 9K about joining Shock, because of the machine learning stuff, and they wanted that whole skill set. So nobody's thrown away. Yeah, nobody's thrown away more opportunities than me.
You could have been Casaurus.
Yeah, I got one in the end, so it's fine. It would have been the year before Casaurus, right? But yeah, nobody's thrown more than me, I think. But
yeah, I mean, if you had taken that job, Casaurus would still be playing GeoGuessr and coaching European contenders teams, I suspect. But,
On the note of Moon, quickly, obviously Moon as a coach has had a lot of success in his own right. You're probably one of a few people who have experience directly working with him. What was his style like as a coach? What was he like with the players or as a boss?
I always felt when I talked to him, we were equals. When he talked to the players, he was like the dad, but me and him, he wasn't really strategic. He was like a dad coach. I think you guys talked about this type of coach a lot before, right? I think he might be the best dad coach I've ever worked with, or even seen. The way this guy could control a room, this guy could take over a country. I think he was so good at speaking. He had such a presence about how he dressed, how he acted. It was crazy. I realized I would never be that from watching him. I realized that would never be my strength. I'm way too autistic. He is special, I think, in that way. But he wasn't the best strategic coach as well. So he needed that sort of balance. I think I fucked him by leaving, because he didn't have that when I left, right? And then the season went. The We Are 07 memes, started as well. They had one of the worst stages ever, right after being a really strong team, and he got fired. And then he goes to Shanghai as Dongsu, and things are good again. He needs he needs that assistant coach, I think, that covers his weaknesses, because he does have a lot of strengths, I think.
Would that end up almost being a similar relationship to how you and Packing worked as well for periods? Where Packing I've always heard Packing is described as the dad of the team, the father figure.
Packing was a bit better about the game. I would say he wasn't he played Overwatch a lot. He watched VODs a lot. He wasn't an expert or anything. He wasn't elite at that role, but he had a way better understanding than Moon, I think, at that. But Moon had the ability to speak Korean, which does tend to help, I think, a lot. So
it's a good one.
I thought Packing was I thought he was an insanely good dad coach. Because it wasn't 100% dad, but it's Western effective, I guess
fucking grinder too. He's doing chess now. He's the chess director.
No, I mean, it's that guy permanently has 3 different jobs while simultaneously working towards an MBA while having a wife and
kids.
Yeah. I mean, God knows how much he's parenting.
He's a pilot,
with everything that he's doing. But he's a golf coach at the university that he's studying for the MBA. I don't know, the guy literally has his fingers in so many pies. I'm pretty sure he's using his toes at this point. It's actually ridiculous.
Unreal respect. I don't know. I couldn't do it.
It's crazy because he doesn't seem like he's half-assing stuff, he does all this shit, but it's you go to work with the guy and he's fucking doing it,
He must take a lot of drugs, there must be something going on there.
What's he doing? I reckon there's 2 Packing10s, it's a twin situation.
Twin, yeah.
It's we're in the Prestige or something. Sorry for the spoiler. Anyone that wants to watch the Prestige, they're twins.
Fuck. All right, should we talk a little bit about more recent Overwatch? Obviously, we have the 2 coaches of the top 2 European teams from Flash Ops. Chris finally got his one over Gunba.
And the casters of the unofficial
unofficial casters.
The best co-stream I'd ever seen. Twitch TV, that's /uncoachable.
_OW. He doesn't know.
_OW.
The original one was taken, it was fair to say. So how?
Yeah, where do you want to start? I mean,
Well, how did you
Flash
end up
Ops?
on SRP check? Like, what's the connection to ending up on that team, and
so we were
why
building
that
a roster
team?
for that tournament, and then half our players were Finnish, and then Clardy mind controlled them, and like started like sapping our players to build his roster, and we're like, and he's like, I guess he realized it'd be easier if he just took us as well, because then we'll just like remove all the barriers and be one team, and we're like, okay, fuck it. And then we left that team because we wanted to coach Saudi. Cloudy messaged me a bunch of shit about Ryan Sim or Sig Sim, and I was like, this shit's dog shit. I don't want to deal with this. I'm just going to focus on Saudi. And then the Saudi stuff exploded for, sleeping in reasons, unfortunately. That's a first. And so we came back and we're like, okay, let's work on SRP check, I think. Yeah, it was like pretty simple. I think it was like obviously the best roster to join that we had the ability to join. Obviously, Chris had all the Overwatch League players, but we had some talent for sure. It wasn't like a bad roster at all. I don't know. Yeah, that's about it, really. It was just looking for whatever we could find. Sauna, obviously, relationship with Sauna from Overwatch League, and we saw Ghost and Ghost. I'm talking about players nobody has any idea about, obviously, but Ghost is the flex support for SRP check, and he's like an amazing, he's like 17, I think, still in high school. Amazing player. We had him and like Vistola, obviously, from World Cup. So looked promising. So we just joined the best team we could, I think, and tried to work on helping them improve.
Because everyone obviously has this reputation that you're very high standards, very high demanding. Does that change when you maybe come into a team that now isn't full of some of the best players in the world, and there's going to be
the
more
whole thing was different.
limitations?
I think if you look at Flash Ops as a tournament, it's just like the opposite of the Overwatch League in every possible way, right? Like there's no contracts, all the rosters are built like weeks before the tournament. Maps are getting fucking taken out of the pool randomly because they don't work like every other day. Like I think we lost like half our maps. Like Blizzard was that map, we just lost that shit. There's like 3 patches. Like Kiri got buffed a bunch of fucking times. Like it was just there's so much going on, because there's no like orgs, the teams just get super stacked. It happened to like every region, like where there's like 1 or 2 teams that was like super dominant. And coaches kind of get screwed in that system, unfortunately, because you don't have so much time to make an impact. But I don't know. It was different for sure. I think. I mean, like there were so many things I've never seen before in my life. Like people would just not show up to scrims, right?
Yeah.
Like I was just like, you can do that? Like that's an option? Like I haven't missed a scrim in like 7 years. What do you mean? Like
what are you gonna do? Find them? Like
yeah, exactly. You just have no like they're not a captive audience in any way, which is unfortunate. We didn't really do any review. There was no review. Like I would do like a YouTube video occasionally, like every 3rd scrim or something about things that I saw. Or we just like flame them in the scrim. We couldn't scrim more than once, like 5 times a week because Ghost had like high school, so he couldn't stay up late. Like just some crazy shit I've just never. I mean, obviously it's not that crazy, but the jump, from Overwatch League to this Flash Up shit was different for sure. Yeah, it was crazy. Like, I learned a lot. I think about. I'm glad I did it. Like obviously we got 2 seconds, which is like I think the expected result. It's not like an over or under performance. It's just okay. Like, maybe we could have beaten EXO in that first match, but even then I think we'd have lost in the end, right? But I learned a lot about like how things change when the Overwatch League no longer exists. Because some of these things are not specific to this tournament. I obviously hope there's some kind of league next year, but I think when you have like way less time to scrim and you have like much worse practice quality and the patches are so fucking random and like the talent level of the players is way more variable and all these like factors have changed because of the Overwatch League dying, suddenly the style of like play that you want to implement, I think changes a lot. I think what we saw consistently is you have COVID, Unter, holy shit. The quality of play is going to change a lot because I think EXO saw this as well, and like I'm sure this happened in NA with like Hawk playing Junker Queen. You see this like, yeah, you see like, EXO tried to play Dive and it was just dog shit. Like we tried to play like a bunch of different stuff and it was fucking awful. You have such little time to develop anything, and you have such little time with the teams themselves that I think we're going to see a return to like this one-dimensional sort of play one comp all the time Overwatch, right? And we saw that in almost every region. Like we saw. Another thing is I think you're going to be rewarded way more for picking up more experienced players as well. So I think like the whole landscape of things changes. I think without organizations in the picture, we're just going to see every tournament won by like friend stacks, essentially, because there's no barrier to playing with the best players. Like, for example, we really could have used Psycho, right? Like the Flex Tech and Flex DPS next to it. That would have been huge for us. Like it may have even won us the tournament having this guy, but both of the Flex DPSs in Europe were on the same team because it doesn't cost anything, right? Why wouldn't, even if you're Psycho, why wouldn't you take that? He got to win in the end and didn't even really have to play that much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so
yeah,
I think.
Backbone's on our roster too, technically. So we
Oh
have,
yeah,
like,
you guys have all
like,
3. Yeah.
Yeah, we have like all
the
of
3
them.
best Flex DPS in Europe.
We had 3 hit scans. Like we had 3 hit scan
Yeah.
players. It's like, and I think like if orgs don't come back into Overwatch, every tournament's going to look like this, right? It's going to be one team with like all of the players, and then and we saw this in Korea, like the fucking fielder the team that Team Korea in the World Cup. Yeah, the World Cup Korean team should have been this team, but they had Sparkle for some reason. So who fucking knows? But this team, Hamster, yeah, you can see that they're going to win from a fucking mile away. Like, how are they going to lose with that team? And then you have NA, which is like how many Overwatch League players won a Flash Ops? How many non-Overwatch League players won a Flash Ops? Like one? Vega, right?
Just Vega, and he should be an Overwatch League player.
I guess like Sky, if you include him, because he didn't finish the season in Overwatch League.
Okay, people who had like that experience.
Yeah,
so it's like you can see overwhelmingly the experience is going to matter so much if the tournaments are so short term and the patches are so random. Like the only reason Mayhem became like, I think Mayhem reached like I think you fairly say like a pinnacle of Overwatch in terms of like how he played. Like I don't think people played Overwatch at that level before that. And the only reason we're able to do that is because we had 2 years with those players, most of them, and we like taught them all these different comps and like all these different ideas, and we could play this like high level like chess game of Overwatch. That's not possible in 3 weeks, In fact, you're incentivized to make like a hard gamble at the start, which we did. We like the Ram carry stuff in EU Flash Ops to try and like segue back to that. But yeah, I think EXO had the read on that one for sure. Like the Junker Queen comp is insane, especially with the carry buff. That shit was pretty oppressive. I think that comp would have won an A2 if they had any idea how to play Junker Queen, which they just didn't for some reason. Like,
I mean, but this is where the experience gap comes in as well. Like, I'm sure part of the reason, and Chris can maybe speak more to this, is why X Oblivion had so well is because there's loads of ideas and ways to play comps that they can just plug and play from all their combined experience in Overwatch League. And a lot of these other teams just don't have those same systems they can call back to, so they don't have the same resources to pull from, or the same back knowledge to pull from.
Yeah, we had a really similar experience in terms of it was so difficult for us to even qualify for the event because we had so many people who had like different like holidays or they were in Saudi. Yep. So we effectively like we got it. We were so lucky to qualify. Like actually, if like one result in like one of these like random cum low matches goes differently, we don't even qualify. We get knocked out. But we also had a very similar situation in terms of we basically only had like 2 weeks to practice. We were able to get like two blocks most days of practice for like 2 weeks. So I was not really doing any reviews. I was obviously in Korea and China and stuff. So as you guys have noticed, it's not easy to get a setup working most of the time. So for us, it was very much like I was just like, I just need to. If my only job as a coach is to figure out the best comp that works for the players that I have, and some super basic like levels of strategy in terms of we want to like our big thing was like we play wide and slow, and then we figure out just some basic ways that like how to play like the ult economy, and then we did a little bit of review from the first game we played when we realized that we were making some mistakes in terms of like maybe we were like diving the backline too hard, and if we just contested DPS, our comp could eventually win. But I felt like because I obviously had like by far the best roster, like it wasn't like an achievement to win the tournament. It was more like if I don't win the tournament, it's kind of embarrassing. And all I had to do really was just like, it was like the Kevster problem was like, if I can just unlock Kevster, then I'll just win Europe, because like obviously if I just play them on May, then we probably lose. So if I could figure out just some sort of comp which works where I can get Kevster on a Kevster hero, I feel like the trio of like Hadi, Kevster, Astro is like so high level compared to like the vast majority, like if not all. I guess you can make an argument that like Sparker, Kai, and Quartz didn't play, so there's like elite level like DPS talent that didn't play, and maybe if Twisted were involved, it would be a different story. But I feel like that core of like Hadi, Astro, Kev, as long as you can just figure out a way to get all three of them comfortable, they're like, it was so evident in terms of the way that they were communicating and like leading. I was like, this is just like, these are just really, really high level players.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think like I realized the wide and slow thing was working for like, it became really difficult to deal with because I felt like if both of us played wide and slow, your team would just kill people for free eventually. Like every single time, like you get a free pick or like with the queen, or like Kevster would one shot our fucking carry. Like we got skill gapped on that slow matchup so often, and the only way to play fast was to play Lucio, and we had Gala and you had Flying Astro. So it just felt like trapped. I think the Kiri Ram comp was a good idea, but ultimately I think it was like pretty one-dimensional, right? It was like Gala flank all the time, and we play slow, but we have a carry. I think eventually Kev just started running over Gala every fight, and it's just like now
what we did in the first game was Kev was trying to kill Ghost every time, so you would just TP back and then Ram May would peel him. So we just said, okay, instead of doing that, let's just only play to either mark the Soj and Kiri angle, or just like effectively just like slow it down even more unless it's like an ult situation. And it felt like almost immediately that like concept, it seemed to be okay.
Yeah, because my feeling on what you guys were doing, this like wide and slow stuff. I mean, I even heard it like watching back the VOD that you guys were like using, not to call it a buzzword, but the players are saying like in game, yeah, wide and slow, this sort of stuff. I did feel like looking at your comp, the Queen comp, I thought if you played wide and slow, you would lose if it's like two completely equally skilled rosters head to head, But because you've got Funny Astro and you've got Kevster as your two people taking this side fight together, it's like, yeah, just play wide and slow. They are going to win their duel 95% of the time. It's like you could really see it in the finals in the POVs. Like every fucking time Gala would go wide, the guy was just getting wrecked. Like he just didn't stand a chance. When it was trying to push Ghost and Gala actually like being a little bit more uncontested, you could see he was carrying the game. But if you took that guy out, like even though on paper, he's winning that side fight. Like there was just too much of a skill gap there, and turning it into like a 2v1 for him as well, that kind of makes it impossible.
Yeah. But that was like, to be fair, that was like one of the only strategical decisions that we made in the entire tournament. Like I look at London and I'm like, I made like 7 tweaks between series and all of this. And it's like, yeah, I'm fucking sitting on the Steam Deck. So I've got fucking Haddy to screen share the VOD for me. And I'm like, no, draw left here, draw right here. So it's like, it's so like scuffed that it was very much a base level to the point where it is kind of inevitable, I think, that the team with the best players is just going to keep winning, assuming that we get like more flash ups down the line.
I think that stops happening as soon as there's orgs though that can like pony up for certain players and like split them up. I think like if you can get like Psycho and Kev on different teams, or like I don't know, like Chase Torch and Hardy and Vistola on different teams, and like I think a player like Ghost, like he's probably the best flex support in Europe. I think that's like a reasonable thing to say. Like he's definitely the guy you would pick up for an Overwatch League season 10 times out of 10. But right now he's not, because he lacks all of that experience. And it's just like, the only way there's a future is if there's orgs that actually pay people money and like create that competition. It's like, so I think Flash Up showed like a lot of that. Like it really showed what like an amateur sort of tournament looks like. And it looks like shit, to be honest. Like it's going to be like pretty, it's fun. It was fun the first time. I do think most of the viewership was just drops though, to be honest. Like the chat was so fucking slow. So I'm not sure like the actual viewership, but it was fun to watch, to be honest. Like,
yeah. I think you're fundamentally right that we need orgs, but one thing that I want to say, and I think like this is something that we push for hard, is I really think that like I wish it wasn't the case, but I really think that some of these like streaming scrims and these more content focused thing, I think it has to be the way. Like Overwatch, like players have to become more comfortable with streaming scrims. I know every team in Flash Ops towards the end didn't let us stream our scrims, but we asked every team. We were like, please let us stream like scrims. And one thing I'll say is this: like Haddy and Astro streamed their scrims, they would have made as much money from the Twitch streaming the scrims as they did from the prize pool. So if you're one of these teams that was like, oh, please don't stream our scrims, and you finish fucking 8th, well done. Like you've just effectively double cooked you, while like Astro and Haddy are getting double bubble, and I feel like a lot of the co-stream stuff, especially on Uncoachable_OW, seem to be pretty well received. And I really feel like if you want, like, here's the logic: is if you want an org to come in, if we have a scene where an org picks up a team and my players say, oh yeah, by the way, we have 4 to 6 hours of streaming scrims every single day, that org is so much more likely to actually sign us and pay us a salary based off like just that streaming number. It's so much easier for orgs to pump their sponsors if they can have someone stream on Twitch and they just put bell in the bottom right hand corner instead of only getting to like show your brand once every month or two in Flash Ops. If like I'm basically talking to any EU NA player that said to our team, no, we can't stream scrims, you're actively killing the game by not allowing this. I know that it's really annoying that people can see your strategies, and I know it's really annoying that you can't spam the N-word 24/7 because you're on stream, but like we really, really actually have to, because this game itself, Overwatch as an actual core product in terms of watching it, it's so fucking boring. It's so hard to watch. It's so difficult as a spectator sport. One thing that I've noticed, and I spoke to Cloudy about this, Haddy, Astro, every time they stream scrims, they get like a 40% uptick in viewers. People actually want to watch this. It is actually genuinely really good content. If we get teams that continue to say, oh yeah, I don't want to stream scrims, I don't want to do this, if you keep doing that, you're just going to kill the scene. Like we just won't have, like, we'll just be stuck with a Flash Ops every 2 fucking months. Like maybe this ESL thing is going to roll around in a few weeks. We have to co-stream the shit out of it. Teams have to stream it. Like content in terms of source code, what Toronto did is good, but no one watches it. Content and streaming your fucking scrims is so much easier and is so much more higher value. So please, if I know every single Overwatch player seems to watch this podcast anyway, so I know I got, like, if you've made it this far, but please understand, if you want to get a salary in the future, which I do, which probably you do, we need to stream scrims.
I have a question though on that note. Like, I agree. Obviously, we tried to stream every scrim. We had Cloudy, obviously. I mean, we didn't like individually stream, but Cloudy wanted to stream every scrim, and we wanted that too, right? And every team said no to us as well. The question I have though is, what incentive is there for a team? Let's take a team like X. What are they called? The fucking names in this region.
XO Oblivion.
The team is XO, but not you. That one. Yeah. XO.
Hybrid, like Hybrid and Chase team.
Hybrid, William Amon and Chase Torch and Canale and Crispy. Yeah. I think. Yeah, I remember the whole roster. Holy shit. No, not him. No. He actually played in scrims a lot. But the question I have is like, what is the incentive for that team to stream if no one wants to watch them play? I feel like that's the big question mark. I think that's why they say no. It's like I think none of these guys have a stream, and none of these guys get money when our team stream.
Yeah.
It's harder for them, I think, because they're already losing. It's just like I do see their point of view. I don't know how you fix that. It's not like revenue sharing.
Yeah, the argument would just be something like, if you stream it, you get the opportunity to build up. If you do make it big, then like there is a way. Like, I understand the point that like the lower teams, no one's going to watch their streams, but I feel like it's one of those things that we need to do as a collective, that everybody what is it, like the highest tide raises every boat or something like that, right? Where it's like if we just do something that's objectively healthy for the scene, even if you're not making stream money, if orgs come into it, people are watching it, other orgs will try to compete. All of a sudden that 5th or 6th place team might get picked up because there actually is a lot of orgs that want to pick up the 1st and 2nd place team.
Well, I think as well for like teams like this, because I think like, to be fair, like Hybrid and Will like do stream a bit, Chase streams occasionally, same with Crispy, but obviously, their streams won't get as many viewers as Astro or Haddy, because Astro and Haddy have several years of Overwatch League buff. They've been doing it for longer, and also they invariably are going to end up on probably the best team of favourites to win. But that doesn't mean you get zero money. That doesn't mean, it still means you get more money than if you weren't streaming. And I think the way these things work is the way you like make a breakout is if your team performs, right, you have like we won the tournament, but no one expects us to win the tournament or something. But what you want is to have been streaming that moment. If you don't start streaming until after you have that moment, you miss essentially what would be, I don't know what you'd call it, like your blow up moment or your big all the eyes come to your channel moment if you're not already ready for it, if that makes sense.
And the other thing is, like, if you're streaming and your team wins a bloody map versus the favorites, people will go and watch your stream instead. You know, they'll be like, shit, these guys are causing an upset. How are they doing that? Let's go watch that instead. You know, like there's definitely like some bleed over between the streamers. I'm not saying that, you know, everyone should just stream for exposure, but, you know, at the end of the day, like people will tune into your stream if they see you in the lobby and they know that you're streaming and you win, right? Like, you know, people want to see multiple perspectives. So, you know, it might actually take views away from like the big dogs that are currently capitalizing on the market so much.
Big dogs.
Well, another thing is like
medium dogs.
Medium to small dogs. Let's be honest. But did you see any NA scrim streaming at all?
We scrimmed against both AT and Timeless, and they both obviously denied it. And I heard, maybe again this is classic Chris spreading propaganda, but I heard that it might. I don't know which one it was. There was one of those top 2 NA teams that actually didn't let co-streamers into their streams for the first round of games. Like, actually didn't even want their games. Like, you know, I can't remember. I'm sure someone told me this, and I can't remember who it was, but they were like, oh yeah, they won't even like. I got turned down to like co-stream this game because they don't want it on stream.
Maybe this is specific because I asked for final day, Unter got permission from everybody, all teams involved and Blizzard themselves for the finals. But for first day, which was the day that wasn't broadcast by Blizzard at all for whatever reason, I went and asked every team, and every team said yes, both NA and EU. They said they were happy to have us in lobby.
Maybe it was during the qualifiers then. Maybe it was.
Yeah, this was only from the knockout phase. I asked. I don't know about the Swiss.
Yeah, in the playoff stage,
I believe that shit 100%. Yeah.
Right at the end in the playoff stage, I had difficulty getting permission from one of the teams. You know, not to name names and fucking throw shade or whatever. Yeah, RuPaul. RuPaul initially didn't want us to watch his team because
American RuPaul.
Yeah, American RuPaul. Your RuPaul.
You know him.
He initially didn't. He didn't want me and CommanderX in the lobby.
So disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just eat shit, RuPaul, I guess, you know.
100%.
Now that we're out here.
Wow.
I mean, thanks for letting us in at the end of the day, but, you know, like everyone else immediately was like, yes, you know, the co-streams are fun. We like watching your stuff.
He hesitated.
And RuPaul just don't award me. So, you know, eat shit, I guess.
He thought he committed a thought crime.
He committed a thought crime. Not cool with that. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they let us in, so power to him. I just begged his teammates over and over again, because it's like, I've got the Discord DMs of Timeless on like speed dial. So as soon as Ripple wasn't replying, it was like, I've got another 4 people that I can start spamming right now. Surely
Dial-up
one of them will
seeker.
plot into. Yeah, genuinely.
I think Chris is right. Like, I just think it's especially a problem when there's no league. I hope ESL is like a league. Yeah, everyone keeps saying ESL. I've heard ESL. I think we've all heard it. No one knows what the fuck it is. It's just ESL. I mean,
ESL.
Great. Owned by Saudi Arabia, who I've been shit talking this whole podcast, but yeah. Anyway, I think like the thing about Overwatch League that made it kind of good, it was shit, but made it, reasonably good, is that it was like so frequent. It was like every day you would have like especially when you have these like spread out tournaments like Flash Ops. I think streaming Scrims is the only thing filling time and keeping the category alive for that period of time. So I think especially in those cases, I can understand like a bit closer to the matches or whatever if people like get a bit cagey about it, but I think people not wanting streams like 3 weeks before a $10,000 event, I think you're insane. Like,
yeah. And even then, like if I watch your scrims and I see your progress, I'm actually invested in the storyline. So the odds of me watching the final product, even if it's not streamed, they're like way high. Like let's imagine ESL is LAN, so you can't stream the LAN games. But if I've watched your build up to the LAN for the last 2 weeks on like Twitch, then I feel like I'm way more likely to like make a note in my calendar that I actually really want to watch this because I want to see how they do.
I think you could honestly find like a middle ground as well, where you kind of like you edge the viewers a little bit, not to bring up edging every single time I talk. You could definitely like edge the viewers a little bit with this sort of stuff, where it's like you're in like the low stakes phase of the tournament and everyone is streaming the scrims, and then like a week out before the big matches, everyone does like an embargo on their scrims. You build up a little bit of hype. Spectators, they have less of an idea of who's actually going to win. So I feel like that's actually important that you don't like oversaturate the market with people seeing what the results are going to be like, because that's a thing, right? Like the people who win scrims typically, unless they're full of chokers like AT, they win the tournaments, right? So I think it's actually good to keep like a little bit of a secret from the viewers before the tournament day. But you could build it up in like these low stakes qualifying phases, and then you have the match and it's hype again. Like you have a week break where people aren't streaming the scrims. Players are more comfortable because they can hide some kind of last minute strategies, stuff like that, and then you come back out with it again.
Yeah, I think that's actually like a really reasonable balance where like you said, that like I feel like teams get to like do their last minute swaps, but enough time has been built in that people actually want to watch it.
Yeah.
Why isn't there co-streaming of the scrims? That's the thing I don't understand. I feel like that's the most fair thing. I think streaming the comms for a lot of teams, I think justifiably so, is a bit much. Like, I am absolutely the kind of person who will go and watch all of your comms before we play. Like, I will use that every time. That's a huge advantage. How you think, like, knowing little things like how London plays, for example, is like super valuable. Like when you're playing a team like that has like such a specific style. Like, so I wonder, like, why isn't there more people co-streaming scrims themselves? Why isn't that a thing? I feel like that's more
could be a
kind of what
decent
Cloudy
idea.
does essentially.
Yeah, but treating it like a match and not Cloudy's kind of not objective. He's obviously on one of the teams, and he'd be playing if he wasn't banned for blatant racism. But
True.
But like, why isn't? Wouldn't it be good practice for casters and stuff too? And like,
yeah, actually, Uncoachable could get on
Should
that.
we
No,
do
that's
it?
a good idea. That's actually a good.
Should we do it, man?
You say we should
idea.
get on it, but mate, like, I would love to do it, but I would also love to see like at least $1 arrive in my bank account for all of the time that I'm spending on this at the same time. It's like,
Hey,
We're
so-
so
I don't
close.
care about the scene, all that money. Okay.
I want a job,
Mate, we're so close to affiliate. We can do it. We'll get a little sub button. Everyone will give us a little money every time.
Subs will
Every time you
start
say the word
rolling.
edging, someone will hit their prime sub, and then
Someone will hit the clip button.
You talked about like, I don't know, showcasing players and giving them their moment. I feel like that's way easier when they're being streamed by someone who's commentating their game. Like, fucking, XXO is not going to stream. Like, let's be honest. None of those players are like big on streaming. None of those players have like big personalities that people want to see. Like, maybe I don't know them enough to know that, but
hybrid streams
they
every
have name
day.
brand.
Can't believe you never tune
Yeah, I
in.
mean, he just doesn't have a big personality to go with the stream is the thing.
No one's watching him. I mean, fuck. I guess I don't know. I don't watch him, so I assume no one does. You fuck that guy. But maybe
You made
it's
it
more
this far,
enticing
hybrid. Fuck you.
Maybe it's more
He
enticing if
actually,
someone who's good at
watches the
casting.
podcast
like,
on stream.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
giving him street cred with his viewers is fine. I also hope that there's co-casting for. I think Overwatch League. One of the reasons it suffered so much is that the casting was bad. Like, I'm just gonna say it. I think almost all of the league muted the casting. Most of the matches, unless it was literally like Uber or Avril or something. Like, it was like largely muted, and like it happened very often that our players or like staff or whatever would complain about the casting. And holy shit, we have to mute this. Like, they just had people who weren't full-time coaching the game and casting the game and didn't know everything about the game. And I think like I really hope there's co-streams of Overwatch in the future.
It's like
Well,
the
have I got a
future of
solution
all
for you, actually?
sports. But I think that's one thing that we've been in the dark ages with. I feel like the desk too. Like sometimes on the broadcast I'd watch a desk and I'm like, oh fuck, like are we doing another joke about someone's like fucking cat? And it's like like it feels like the desk, the talent is so important for them to be talent in terms of they feel like they need to be the personalities, and they don't, maybe it's because it's impossible, but I feel like they don't necessarily try to like highlight the game or the players or like the analysis as much, to the point where for anyone that's like trying to watch it competitively, I have to admit I do think it's a turn off.
Yeah, Valorant and League is so good, I think, at this.
Well,
Valorant
CS
and League
as
do
well.
such a good job.
Like I think
CS, I haven't really watched CS, but yeah, I agree.
But like I don't
There's like an entertainment spectrum, right?
Like knowledge plus entertainment,
Yeah,
Right.
But I also feel like if I tune into CS or something, it's so much easier if I've not watched in a while for me to catch up on who everybody is, if there's like a new player or something, or what type of player they are, or who's the big hot property coming up or something. And I don't know if like, maybe I'm biased because like, I guess in many ways, because I spend so much time with Overwatch, I'm always ahead in theory, because we see it all in scrims. But it never feels like there's the same kind of like player hype building or the same kind of, I don't know, like character development. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah. Well, I also think that no streaming also doesn't allow you to have fucking characters either, right? Because no one, like we've said a million times, like half the players in the Overwatch League are like what is it? Fucking Gator said corporate drones. Like it feels like how do you know anyone's personality if the only time you get is like an interview, or if you do like a funny dance after you win? Apart from that, you've got like no chance of like highlighting a personality unless you're able to stream, you know?
Yeah. Well, I do feel like with this co-streaming stuff, I think the more you lean into like the talent side, the less you're involved competitively, the less like, maybe this is like resolved if there's lots of like co-streaming scrims and stuff like this. Like for this uncoachable, co-casting stuff, like the co-streams that I do in Australia as well, it would be absolutely impossible for me to talk as much shit as I do if I didn't watch the game all the fucking time competitively, because I just I wouldn't have even 5% of the confidence to say that someone is fucking up, either because I've worked with them competitively, so I can just flame Funny Astro even if he's doing the right thing for a laugh. But if someone's making like a huge macro mistake, I feel like my ability to identify that would just progressively go down if I was less involved with the game competitively. If you're not constantly being challenged in terms of your understanding of the game, shit changes so often. I feel like eventually you would just become the the corporate drone caster.
I don't agree with that at all, though. Like, yeah, it's real. What you're saying is like fundamentally true. Like, if you are a talent, you'll be worse eventually at coaching the game than a coach. But I think we've seen these kinds of people succeed in every other game, right? Like we've seen these people. Like the Valorant desk is fucking amazing. Every time I watch the Valorant desk, I'm like, what the fuck? These people are so smart. Like they really understand the game, and like, yeah, I just think in Overwatch that wasn't the case. I think Overwatch just did a really poor job on the desk front, on the caster front, like.
I think it's just Jake and friends or what? Like,
I mean, I like the fact that they brought in players. I think that helped a lot.
Yeah. Custer's good, Jake's good, but even then, I feel like sometimes when I watch the segments, especially the pre-show, there's no Overwatch discussion, really, right? Like it's purely like, oh, can we do this word search as a team while dressed as a cat or something, And it's always like,
you got a thing for cats, have you, mate?
not me, mate. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot the messenger. But
I
agree.
I don't watch the pre-show.
And I don't know if it's because I have a less knowledge of League of Legends compared to Overwatch, but when I watch the Overwatch pre-show and in-game analysis, I'm like, this is actually high level. This is better than like when I watch like football analysis. Like this is actually like it's pretty good stuff. And Overwatch for sure is a tougher game, but I feel like maybe there was a certain point, maybe it was the start of Overwatch League, gave up on even trying, It seems like from what we're saying, what we really need, this solution is, say, a group of coaches, for example, who also dip into content creation on the side to be the guys to save Overwatch in some sort of co-stream / podcast type adventure. I mean, if anyone knows where we can find some of that, it does sound like
they could do desk, they could cast, they could do co-streams of broadcasts, which
they
are
could even win flash ups if they put their heads to it.
It does seem like that group of guys, if we can find that, save this game.
I hope you're watching right now, Toronto CEO. put the fucking Bell logo up again. Get it up.
But yeah, I think it's certainly true. I think of some of the esports I've enjoyed, even like StarCraft 2 is never a game I've really played at all. But the quality of casting, I just watch enough. If I watched enough StarCraft and just enough commentary, I wouldn't watch any supplementary analysis videos. But I feel like I would understand what's going on. I'd know the stakes. I'd be able to learn as I'm going. And I don't know. Again, maybe it's always hard to tell if I'm biased in Overwatch because I have got like such a head start on it compared to other things like CS and StarCraft. But it doesn't feel like the same is true, really. And I think especially a game like Overwatch, you need to learn as you watch because it's impossible just to inherently know what's going on or what's good and what's bad and what's important.
It's gonna sound fucked up actually, but like I think when you look at League of Legends, it feels like every single year there's some drama about some caster everyone loved getting fucking kicked. Like it happens year after year. Like they cut some fan favorite caster gets fucking thrown to the curb, and they have this like elitist mentality towards casters. I feel like Overwatch had the opposite problem. I think people just kept their jobs for way too long and like just didn't give a fuck. Like I can't think of any other way to explain the lack of like any kind of game analysis or knowledge on the desk or casting for 6 years straight. And it's so sad, I think, because it goes under the radar a lot. Like, it's not pointed to as something that failed the game and the league. It's not pointed to as a reason for why everything went wrong, almost ever. The fact that the product is shit is a big problem when you're talking about the success of the product, right? Like, and it just gets ignored for some reason. I don't understand it. Like, I think it's fair to say Overwatch League had the worst talent and casting out of any esport, even close to its level. I think you can go and watch fucking mobile games being casted and get a better experience. Like, it's fucked. I don't know. I just think I'm not sure if it's like Blizzard just didn't want to fire people, like what the problem was. But I just think when you look at any other esport, getting spots in like Valorant, getting spots in League of Legends, all of these esports, it's so difficult. You know, it's like such a struggle. Yeah. It's like it's survival of the fittest every fucking year, and it's that way for everybody else involved in the product too. Like, to win the league, I had to fight off fucking Koreans for 6 years. There's so many good Korean coaches. To even be here, I had to beat so many people, and you guys did too, right? And for the players, Max. That's even more true, right? Yeah, Max had a different journey, but for some reason for the product side of the Overwatch League, that wasn't true, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, I felt like there was an element somewhere where they tried to attract all the big names at the start, and then they started to supposedly, and I actually don't know if this is true because I did talent for one event in the Saudi, and I got paid what I thought was a really reasonable rate, and then I got told that like actually the day rates for like the Overwatch League is like way higher than this. Like I'm getting scammed. I was like, oh, I'm quite pleased with this. But I don't know. There was a thing where people started to say, like, I remember when Sideshow and Bren left, that was like the beginning of the end, because what they effectively said was that like what Overwatch offered them was like so awful that like they refused to do it. And I don't know if it was like, oh, they just ended up like going with casters who would just accept like the rate. Like I feel like Uber, for example, wouldn't have been doing Overwatch if he didn't like, if they weren't someone that was supplying him with like a visa so he could be with his like family and stuff like that. I think he loves the game, but I'm not convinced that like he would have also stuck around unless maybe he has like an existing contract where his salary is quite reasonable. Yeah, so I don't know if there's an element of that. And probably also to like give some credit to the casters, like it's probably also a more difficult job to cast and analyze Overwatch than it is League of Legends. Like I feel like that's like that has to be true, like the same with CS and Valorant. But I fundamentally share the same like opinions that I think there was many reasons why Overwatch League failed, but I don't think the desk and the product was handled in the right way to the point where, at least from my perspective, I ever really wanted to watch it.
I think everything you just said also applies to StarCraft too, though. No, like StarCraft is excessively awful as an esport right now, and it still has good casting, and I'm sure the rates over there are just as bad. I don't know. Like at some level, I think we had a conversation on this podcast today about how Unter accepted $30,000 for his first job, and he tried his hardest. You know, he grinded for that shit, and I did the exact same thing in season 1. Right,
that was my second job. You got me on Valiant first.
Oh, okay, whatever. Yeah, I got onto Valiant at I think the same number, $30,000. And I quit being a pro player in Taiwan, where I was getting scammed by my org. Like I lived in a shitty house in Taiwan with no Chinese knowledge for a year, just to be an Overwatch player. I'm not saying everyone should accept shit rates, but like there has to be a drive there. You know, the rates are like something you fight for, but you have to always try and do a good job no matter what. You can't just do a shit job because your rates are shit. Like
one thing that's maybe true too is that like I feel like apart from when there was a new hero released, how often did casters ever ask to be in scrims? Like there was always that like 1 or 2 days when there was a new patch and casters would go around, yo, can we be in your scrims? And then for 98% of the rest of the season, they just like it was like always new hero, I'm there 1 day, I'm gone. You know.
Custer would message me pretty often, and like at the start of a season, and just like give me get him to. He asked for like the like to explain the meta to him essentially, like from like a coach POV, like what are the swaps, why are people doing this. He would try and get like a a sort of cheat sheet of the meta at least, I think, which is a positive step. But yeah, absolutely, if I was a caster, I'd be in scrims every day, right? Like not every day, but at least like once, once every couple of days, like trying to like review and practice and like.
I mean, especially if I knew which games I was casting on the weekend. If I had the Valiant Paris game, I would probably love to do some sort of research in terms of some scrims and see how teams are doing and stuff. But maybe this will be like what goes viral, and we'll get the Monty Uber train back on us replying to the tweets explaining it. But yeah, I have to say I agree.
Well, a big reason I agree to help XX Oblivion, even though it was only just for, it would have been ultimately 6 days or something of coaching I did, which is obviously not really enough time to do anything meaningful, but just a little bit of
help. Gosh, we did so much coaching,
But the reason I agreed to do that, and I wasn't getting a prize pool cut, I didn't ask for it, I was like, well, it'd just be nice if I'm planning to co-stream all the games on that week and there's a new patch, well, I'll just get to see the patch, I'll get to problem solve, I'll get to see SR Peak Check play, I'll get to see EXO play, I'll get to see all the top teams play, I'll get a feel for the power level of all the teams, a feel for the meta, and then that'll be really useful when I'm going to go stick myself in front of a camera and try and talk for 6 or 8 hours about it, to at least have a bit of a clue what the fuck I'm talking about. But it always felt, or it felt quite often at least from our point of view, that was never the same effort made when we were in Overwatch League. Which, if anything, should be easier because surely all the teams have signed an agreement with Blizzard, so it should be easier for that communication path to happen rather than just some guy turning up and going, hey, let us in your scrim, will ya?
And my assumption, and maybe I'm naive, but I feel like all the Overwatch League casters will be doing Overwatch League casting as a full-time job, like in terms of like they'll cast for the 3 or 4 days that it's on, but then presumably they earn enough salary that it is their full-time job. So you'd think that in like those other 3 to 4 days, then they would also
be like preparation days or like
like not just
days.
not just off days, but
I think it depends though, because I'm pretty sure some of the casters, like let's call this 70% sure that some of the casters, like in the final year of Overwatch League, that wasn't their only job. Like I'm pretty sure a couple of them had other gigs for different games. A big part of why Sideshow and Bren left, I think it wasn't just that their offer was low. I think that it was basically demanding exclusivity as well. Like they wanted to be involved in Valorant for sure, and Blizzard wouldn't flex on like the exclusivity element of it. It's like they needed them for particular dates, and there was like no flex for it. They couldn't be involved in Valorant at the same time as Overwatch, which is what really I think it drove them out like completely, was the lack of flexibility from Blizzard. Whereas, maybe for some of these lower prior casters, they were willing to be like a little more flexible, or the lower prior casters just weren't so rigid on needing particular dates for VCT and stuff like that.
Well, I think it's certainly true that I don't know the exact figures, but I'm pretty sure the pay rate for casters has gone down almost year on year from Overwatch League from a certain point.
Pay rate for everything's gone down year on year, but we're still there grinding 12 hours a day. I mean, we love the game,
Yeah.
True.
I mean, it's just it can't devolve to the point that you're back in your Taiwan team house getting paid fuck all, getting scammed by your org, because it's like the whole point of you doing that was that you were grinding towards the tier 1, where it will actually be a job. But if it devolves to the point that tier 1 is the old tier 2, what's the purpose of grinding to tier 1? Like you're a grown ass man. You need to pay your bills, or put a roof over your head, unless you live with your mother like me. So it's like it's not. Yeah, but that can happen. Chris, do you live with your mother?
I currently live with my wife's mother temporarily, but
that's like a slight upgrade, actually.
I was going to go lower.
Overwatch coaches and living with their mothers. That's a
I just think, like, just to wrap up how I think about this, like, there needs to be some fucking blood in the water year after year. There needs to be some fucking caster Hunger Games. Like, they need to be killing off a caster each year just to get the rest to be motivated. I think that's the key. Like,
do you think it's fair one caster gets shot every year?
Maybe even have it be a vote.
Yeah. Very democratic of you, the Hitler of Overwatch.
It's actually surprising for the Hitler of Overwatch to ask for democracy in the execution of the caster annually.
But
that being said, again, we said a lot about how Blizzard's at fault and how they are. I mean, Blizzard's fucking shit at running esports. Like, this is not dead horse, right?
New. Yeah.
But I will always hold the casters and talent responsible anyway. Like, come on. Why are you doing a shit job? If that's your firstly, we're reasoning for them. We don't know that that's why they were doing a shit job. Maybe they just suck. But I think if you're gonna put yourself out there on the stream and try your best and be a caster, and that's like your future and that's what you want to do, then take it fucking seriously. Like, Who cares how much you're getting paid? Do it
It's
anyway.
like it's like, for example, there's another podcast which features a lot of the Overwatch League casters, and they're so lazy that they just use our content for their content. I don't know if you guys have heard of this unknown podcast called Plat Chat, but these lazy guys, all they do is just watch our podcast and then farm our hard work, our blood, sweat, and tears, and letting Gator burn these bridges for their content. So the more I think about it, the more really
Well, the thing
It's
is,
just the Uncoachable reaction podcast nowadays. Like,
but the
That's
thing
it.
is, with like coaching, you knew, or I'm sure all of us have felt the idea that if you didn't do a good job when coaching, you were not going
You
to
were
last.
out the door. Yeah.
Part of the pressure and the stress is that not many people get second chances in this league or in these things, and especially, I think like I've been fortunate enough to get 1 second chance with London and Chris, but I think for most people, they don't get that.
no, I think that's not true. I think that's actually not true. Like, there have been people that have been like consistent failures year on year that have
Recycled
managed to retain
Kappa
their
coaches.
jobs. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
like the actual, like, everyone knows their dog shit and they just miraculously pull through, you know? Or it's like
Yeah,
that one guy that every year just gets his fucking cronies in. Like, look at those Titans guys, the Titans coaches. How the fuck did those guys have more than 1 year in the Overwatch
What
League?
was it, 3 years, 2.5 years in the
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the
and,
pressure's
like,
still, like, you still feel the pressure's still
As
real,
an
you know?
aggregate, I think coaches suffer more than. I mean,
Fair.
anyone in the competitive space suffers more than anyone.
There's
on
more
the product.
turnover.
yeah.
Even if there are, there's 20 teams making decisions, there's going to be mistakes. But Blizzard's the only one making decisions about casters. So
Yeah. No, it's actually spectacularly easy to get shot dead as a coach now that you mention it, you know?
even if you're good, sometimes, right? I mean,
Yeah, look at day one, dead in the streets.
For no good reason.
no, we didn't. I took his wallet. What do you mean? It was a great reason.
You took his wallet. You and Gravy split his corpse in two.
Take his wallet, put that money in Charong's pocket. We're sorted.
Put some of my money in there as well.
I wonder how it feels for Chorong, you know, like just to be paid with blood money.
He won the league, so he delivered on. Yeah.
I would feel so guilty though, knowing that everyone else on that team is already earning a quarter of what I earn, took a pay cut to get me in, and I have to look these guys in the face while they carry me to a fucking victory.
It's
Yeah.
not like we reminded him every day. We're like, hey, salary, you got to deliver. Like,
Yeah, you call him Mr.
I would be
250K
like-
or something.
I would be doing all of the housework. I would be getting everyone's food. I'd be doing like an extra massages. I'd be making it up to them in some way because I couldn't look at the guilt of seeing some of my 50k teammates while I'm sat there on big bucks. But maybe that's just me, you know.
I mean, I wonder how Kai felt on LA Valiant in 2020, just fucking absolutely dominating for 50k.
50K, yeah.
Yeah, that's a 50k player for sure.
That was a fun roster. Fuck.
That was awesome.
I still like Dreamer.
Yeah, I mean, he's a funny guy, but you know, like last year he had his absolute terrorism moments in that year. Like he wasn't a terrorist in 23. He just decided to call it quits and leave. But holy fuck, dude! Like I could do like a whole episode segment on Lastro being a suicide bomber in 2020. Like we'll have to save it for another day.
I use him as a good reference for how flex support should communicate. Like the fact that he was just screeching "Gravy, Kevin" like all the time. This is optimal. I think this is so good. Like,
yeah, no, he was good at getting all the resources he needed.
yeah, 100%. Flex support suck at that, dude. They're all so fucking bad. You need to be loud as a flex support. You need to direct your tank. You need to call for peels. You need to call for heals. Like you need to say what you're doing all the time. But every flex support player is a fucking robot. I swear to God, it's so annoying.
Wail like a banshee. Be like Lastro.
Yeah.
All right, should we do a quiz?
Let's do it.
All right.
So is it?
So, I've heard the feedback from the viewers, and the feedback is literally nothing about the quiz, which means that the quiz needs to be elevated. So I thought, I've got a few ideas. What we're going to do is we're going to do a special episode of the quiz called Fraud or Not. Me and my good friend Gunba have been in the DMs, and I have given him a list of 10 to 12, depending on how far we get with tiebreakers, of Overwatch players / coaches. He has ranked whether or not they are fraud or not. You two have to guess fraud or not. If you predict what Gunba thinks, then you get a point. If you don't, then you get it wrong. The rules make sense? Everybody on the same page?
Yep.
Okay, so then we're going to start. We're going to start with a nice, easy one, so that we just really understand the concept of the quiz. And obviously, sometimes maybe Gunba could throw us under the bus and do a curveball here. But number one, checkmate. So X and Unter, you guys guess, and then Gunba will come in afterwards and give his reasonings and answer.
Not a fraud.
Not a fraud. No one stays on Florida, I think, 2 seasons if they are a fraud. So no
Yeah,
fraud.
right. Checkmate was originally a fraud. I think he was like really like he had like Yaki type problems where he had like no team play because he played on Nixel. And over the past 2 years, he's become like such a great player, and a player like I really, really respect. Checkmate's fucking great. I think like he's become such like a flexible tracer, Echo, May. You know, like I think there's a world where he catches backbone on May. You know, how many players can you say that about in the Overwatch
Yeah.
League? I think Checkmate's great. I really love Checkmate. He's become such a good team player and such a good teammate. Like it just took a while, but he got there for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1-1, and now we understand the format. Number 2, Krusty.
Ooh.
Fraud.
I'm gonna go not fraud actually.
Yeah, fraud. I think look, I think there was a point in time where I respected Krusty a lot. Like there were things about. I remember him screaming in like season 1, like "Take space wide, make super play." I remember hearing him coach like that and being like, "Wow, like this guy like knows how to, you know, like he knows how to sound like he cares." I think people said that about me later in my career as well. I got that from him. Like he, you know, just caring about what you're doing is important. But I think over the past 2 years, even though they got to the grand final, you have to say fraud. You know, like what the fuck happened? Like, what's wrong with their roster? Why do they keep changing? You know, how did they take such talent and just accomplish nothing? And then he took most of Mayhem into flash ops and accomplished nothing too. So, yeah, fraud, 100%.
There you go. So 2-1 to Unter. Number 3, I didn't realize we were going to talk about him so much. Hydron.
I mean, this is hard actually because it's like he's been giving defenses, but I think the fraud.
Yeah, I think it has to be fraud based on what's actually been achieved. I guess fraud, but he thinks he probably has the potential not to be a fraud.
You can't get past the choker thing.
Fraud is my answer. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a fraud close to not fraud. I agree. I like Hydron a lot as a person. Like actually, yeah, he's a really good person. Like he's really good for the team culture. He's a really good player. He plays Tracer and like all these different heroes really well, like Sombra and stuff like that. He's even like flex heroes. I think he's like underutilized, but yeah, he choked too much. I think has to be on the fraud camp for sure.
Okay, nice points all around. 3-2 to Unter. Number 4, LA Gladiators coach Unter.
Fraud.
I feel like Gunba definitely likes Unter, but whether he thinks he's a fraud or not, I
saw the World Cup.
Well, I have to catch up, so I'm gonna feel like no fraud.
Yeah, fraud. This year, holy shit! Like, dude, first Glads, and then fucking Team Australia playing Sim. Oh, fuck me. Like, that's fraud for sure. I think.
Okay. At least he's winning the quiz. All right, number 5. The score is 4-2 to Unter. Kevster.
Not fraud.
I feel like now I've gambled by trying to catch up. I just need to sort of keep gambling from a technical plane towards a quiz standpoint. But I feel like there's places to gamble, and surely Kev is not a fraud.
Yeah, absolutely not. I think he had some trouble playing like some of like the new heroes like May and Reaper, and I feel like that's super strange, right? I feel like that doesn't make any sense because given like his talent level so high on like Genji Tracer, like, but he's obviously not a fraud, you know, like he's been grinding so hard for so long and he's so good at so many heroes that Western players just haven't been able to crack for like 6 years, like Tracer and Genji, like 100% not fraud, I think. Also, I just lost him in Flash Up, so.
True. All right. Number 6, Rush.
Absolute fraud. I don't know if Gunba feels the same way though.
No, I think that's how you feel about Rush.
Yeah, I mean that is how I feel about Rush.
I'm gonna go. This feels like one worth gambling. I'm gonna go with not fraud. I feel like his team
fraud.
Oh,
fraud.
my mistake is ever saying the words not fraud.
I mean, do you want me to guess seconds so that then?
Yeah, we should have. The guessing should be alternated.
Yeah,
but we're halfway through now, roughly. I mean,
the quiz is never going to be good, you know.
Yeah, look, I think anybody who puts Sparkle on the fucking World Cup team for Korea has to be called a fraud. Like, I think that Korea cares so much about this, and like they're the country that has like the expectation to win. And you build a roster with people that you like rather than the best players. I think that's insane. I think all the rules about like not signing boosters are bullshit. This is fucking bullshit. Like, yeah, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, they boosted when they're like 16. Get them on the World Cup team, you know? 100% fraud, I think. I also think one thing I want to say about Rush, I could be wrong about this. Has he ever won without, and yeah, I'm saying won in the general sense, not like specifically won the league. He's been successful. Has he ever been successful without the same core of players?
I mean, has he ever been without that core of players? Like,
no.
He was doing Element Mystic back when Jesus was a boy. Like,
because he took them to Paris, right?
Yeah.
And then he took him.
He
not took him to
he
Paris
did
like
well with
that. He
Paris.
didn't take him to Paris like that.
Paris?
He did.
You want to see the Eiffel Tower, Herman?
I think what he did with Paris was impressive. If he did it all, I've never really heard anything about him as a coach though.
That's probably 9K. You know, 9K, the GM coach.
9K was there, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
fuck, 9K is not on the list, right?
Could
Definitely
be
not a
though.
fraud.
Look at what happened
Definitely
to
not a
Shock. Look at what
fraud.
happened to Shock.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Rush goes in the fraud camp for me. I think.
Okay. 6-3. I was really excited to get to these tiebreakers, but I
We
feel
can
like
do
we're not
them
gonna-
anyway. We can do them anyway, just
Yeah, we
out
can.
of.
All right. Number
Depends if they're
7.
good or not.
Number 7. Hadi.
You got that, X. You got that.
It's actually fucked for me either way because if you're playing tactically, you just match my vote and I can't win.
I'm not playing tactically.
I'm
Like,
worried you're
He's
going
not
to
a
be
tactical
I'm
man.
worried you're playing.
You watched Gladiators this season,
I'm going to go with not fraud. Actually, similar basis. He's just lost to him in flash ops, and actually, I feel like Hadi is probably actually quite a Gunba style of player in terms of willing to give feedback, willing to play the system.
I think, I mean, not to be contrary or whatever. I think, maybe like hot take, not because this isn't how I feel, but maybe this is how Gunba feels. He's been talking about how, Florida would win the Rhine Mirror, stuff like that. I think he's going to call him a fraud because if Hadi was, like losing the Rhine Mirror to Florida and that's his best hero, like from perception, then Hadi must be a fraud, right?
Fraud, not for the reason you said though.
Why do
The reason I
ever say
think he's a fraud is because I remember he came on this podcast and he said, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe you guys remember, he said something along the lines of, actually, he could play a lot of the tank heroes, just the team couldn't support that. Is that true?
I think some heroes definitely true. Like I feel like.
Oh, is it true that he said it though?
Oh, yes, I think he said it.
Because that's absolutely fraudulent. I'm sorry. I think he's great at Ryan. He's pretty good at Monkey actually. I think his aim's just not good enough to play a lot of his heroes. I think on Junker Queen, I noticed it straight away. Actually his axes was sick. I'll say that, but he had a lot of trouble with the ults and just left click in general.
When he can turn the hero into Ryan, though.
Yeah, if he could just own the fact that he's kind of a one trick and that'd be sick. But yeah, I think he low key thought the team was the problem. I don't know if that's true. I think fraudulent. I think he might never be good at some heroes, and that's okay. I think you should accept that. A lot of people aren't. But yeah, Monkey Ryan, pretty good, especially for a white guy on the Monkey. I think Monkey's not bad.
My feeling with Hadi is that, especially in a EU/NA only league, I'm fairly sure that he's one of the best on a lot of the tank heroes. I feel like, maybe if you say how is his heroes compared to the top tanks, then maybe I think he's not there. But I feel like in terms of Western tank options, I think across almost all heroes actually, minus maybe Diva, Zarya, the ones that he really never plays, I think he'll be one of the best. Okay. I think it's now 7-3, so it looks pretty over. But number 8, Pelican.
Oh, my bias is just going to win too much. Not fraud, but Gunba probably thinks he's a fraud. If history.
Yeah, I've learned my lesson by saying not fraud all these times, so I'm surely going to say fraud this time and be vindicated.
I don't know anything about Pelican, actually. I've never talked to him or interacted with him or heard anything about him.
He's a fucking amazing player.
Yeah, I'd say I'd lean not fraud if I had to pick one. I'm not just sorry, I'm not. I think he's really good. I think he might force his teams to play too much around his hero pool. I saw fucking they're playing basically Mayhem plus Pelican plus Vigi, and they're playing Echo in the wrong places. I feel watching that match so I wonder if maybe he's someone who's a bit controlling for the wrong reasons. I've heard he's toxic as well. I don't know if that's true. I mean, you would know, Unter. I wouldn't know. You should burn that bridge.
He was an alright kid on Atlanta, but I heard that it just got more and more toxic as time went on. People thought going to a full Korean roster would make it better for him, but it actually just made him a fucking dictator.
So I think he's hard, not fraud, trending fraud, if that makes sense. But at the moment, he got to the grand finals. I mean, second in Korea, right? I mean, not fraud, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Number 9, Junk Buck.
This is fraud.
I'm gonna. Whatever I say seems to be wrong, but I'm gonna go with
You've
not.
lost faith.
Yeah, not. I'm gonna go with not fraud because I think actually he was there when Shock was successful, and then I think Houston of Overwatch actually looked pretty good while he was there as well.
They sucked dick the first year he went to Houston, but Gunba might have missed that season actually because he was Valorant at the time. So I should have considered that in my answer actually. Fuck.
Yeah, I'd go hard, not fraud. Actually, like
Ooh.
I'm surprised that you even
Come back.
you think. I mean, I think the reality with him. Again, I haven't really talked to him, but every single player he works with says he's the best coach. First of all, every single one, like literally every single player says that. Fucking Kyle said that to us in Valiant. Like it was annoying. Actually, he'd bring it up like every review. It was
Piss
so
you off all
annoying.
the time that Kyle would be like, "Oh, Junkbuck said
Yeah, he
this."
just wouldn't. Or mid-review, one-on-one. I'm like teaching him how to play. It's like, but Junkbuck made me so smart. It's like, holy shit, dude. Like, so in my head, how can this guy be a fraud? I don't know. Yeah, Houston. I wouldn't say like blew me out of the water, but they were good. They got to the grand finals. He won on shock twice. I mean, someone had to carry Krusty, so US World Cup as well, I think, is a big one, right? Like he was on that
True.
too.
Yeah.
I think hard, not fraud.
All right. Number 10, Majed.
I mean, don't even fucking bother,
Is-
dude.
Not fraud. No, I'm kidding. Yeah,
All right.
for sure fraud, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do the first bonus question. Sinatra.
Not true.
Not fraud. No further comments.
Can I add another further comment in there as well?
Yeah, you can add
Yeah,
as little comments as you want.
Yeah, I mean, hard, not fraud. He was a great player. He's great in Valorant too. People might not like some of his decisions he's made, but yeah, great player and like a big reason why Shock won. I think one of the best Western players of all time.
Yeah, I would like to also mention no comment.
Would
All
you like
right.
to not comment, Gumba?
No comment.
Okay, excellent. We're safe. All right. Last bonus question. ChrisTFer.
Not fraud.
fraud.
Fraud? No, yeah, kind of boring. Some of these questions are boring. I think like ChrisTFer and Margie, I think pretty boring, but
Wait, what?
not fraud.
How would you rate the quiz?
Nice.
Fraudulent or not fraudulent?
Not fraudulent. This is a good idea.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
we'll see if the
But
comments
again-
are good. Then I'll start to do this with every guest, maybe.
I want to say though, I'm burning some bridges and I'm okay with that, but I think ChrisTFer needs to burn them as well. He picked these players knowing what I would say, so
Yeah, I mean it's true. I did purposely pick players that would give us maybe the most bridge
he
burning. I
picked
did.
players you suspected would be frauds.
Well, I tried to make some of them interesting. Like I wasn't really sure where we'd go with like Pelican Haddy. I wasn't like 100% sure which way we'd go. And then some of them, your ex players, I wasn't quite sure we would hit them so hard already in the podcast. So this is just an opportunity to give you more bridges to burn. It's really like I'm doing you a favor if you think about it.
Yeah, but the players I hit really hard did that to me after they left the team, so they deserve it, I think.
I mean, it's like
True.
Hydron's dead in the street with day one now. Like it's fucked. Like, honestly, so
That pile
Yeah,
of
well.
former Florida Mayhem people is piling up.
it's just a question of whether we can open their wallets for next year's budget at this point.
Albert's already there, rustling around their pockets.
Next week, I'll pick better guests. I'm sorry, guys.
Better guess?
Quiz. No. That brings us into our next segment, the rating the guest. Better quizzes.
So yeah, let's tidy up with. We'll do user questions into client of the week into rank Gunba.
I mean, I looked at those user questions. It looks like we kind of covered it all.
We
low
covered a
key.
lot of them.
Maybe just do the
first
wasted
one.
potential question only, and then call it.
Yeah, we must be like 3.5 hours in right now, right? This is like
Yeah,
the
we
longest
gotta-
one by
It'll be a little
far.
bit shorter because of our tech break, but yeah.
Okay.
You mean the second one, right, Unter?
Yeah, the JR Smith.
Yeah, so from JR Smithsonian, he says, obviously you don't got a great eye for underrated talent. Who do you think were some of the players who deserved better or the sort of wasted potential players in the league or even outside of the league that you would have maybe
Jesus
loved to have on
Christ.
your team? Or
I mean, there's a lot of obvious ones, right? Like Courts or Cookie or whoever, these people who said no to us for like personal reasons, right? I mean, that's not wasted talent though, that's their choice. So it's hard to call them wasted talent. Thinking back on it, I think Silk Thread in season 1. I wanted to start him over Agilities, as well as KSF actually. I want to start both of them over Agilities. And we had to kill him, and then KSF came in for Silk Thread. So I think those two probably should have been in season 1. They should have been like household names in that first season. Who else? Help me out here. Usually you guys picked up the players. Yeah.
I think Rain from Valiant in the year that you left was like massively underrated. Like really good Lucio in Overwatch League, and he got re-signed and then just cut and disappeared into the ether forever. Like nobody even thought of him a second time.
It's hard to think of players who like did. I feel like the Overwatch League was pretty good about that. Like there weren't that many people who like. I think there were a lot of players who believe that they didn't get that shot, right? Like Chase, I think Chase Torch maybe is a good shout. I think we talked to him already. I think he should be up there as well. Anybody who touched Paris as Norg, right? I think got fucked.
Yeah.
But how many of those people were wasted potential?
I mean, like Vistola, for example. I think.
Khan.
Yeah, that,
Khan's
actually,
good.
no,
Khan's a
that
good
original
example.
roster, like Khan, Vestola, Dredro, all got completely fucked. Actually, I don't know what
Yep.
you're talking about. Those three all deserve to be in Overwatch League the whole time. So that was crazy.
I feel like there's some more. It's hard to remember. So it's been so many years. I don't think you have any Korean players.
Yeah, there goes your bias.
I'm white, so I'm a little
Somebody
biased.
has to
I mean.
say it. Not me.
Hard to tell, but you know what I mean.
The Four White Guys podcast. on
Any
episode
Australian players that got cucked?
8. No,
Adam.
Adam,
Really?
somebody cucks Adam, yeah.
No,
yeah, I mean, somebody put Adam in the chair and fired him 2 years ago. Like, preseason, but, you know,
I got
like,
one of the years, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, and I got him for the other. I don't know. I think everyone that was Australian was like relatively well rated in terms of their potential. You know, maybe Australians were like, Trill was so hard done by, but it's like Trill wasn't hard done by. Trill just didn't grind once he got into Overwatch
Yeah.
League.
I think
He's
Punt
just
did
lazy.
really fine. I guess he's not Australian, but New Zealand colour hex.
He got more than enough chances. He got fucked by Laurie, his Korean head coach, and like put in awkward positions in matches. But like at the end of the day, Colorhex like never stopped grinding, and he never really had an insane match performance outside of like match 2 of his entire career where he popped off on Oasis. Like
That the Widow one, was it?
Yeah, no, I agree. There was also on Realtor, the Widow against Valiant.
yeah, no, he had a couple of good Widow performances right at the beginning.
Zarya, who's hopeless. Yeah, fucking awful.
Yeah,
I feel like Overwatch League is like, actually, to Overwatch League's credit, it's such a good league for talent. No, like I feel like the league did such a good job, and people like us help with that, obviously, but it did such a good job picking up
Right.
unknown people from every country. Like we had so much talent. I think like maybe some Europeans. I feel like you guys should know more than me about this. I feel like Europeans got fucked the most.
I think
Yeah.
Daneb got scammed a little bit, to be honest. Like he kind of missed his window where he could have been good. But like if he ever got onto a team where he could play his hero on low ping, you know, he probably would have had like a decent
Asking
time.
got giga fucked. Asking got actually screwed.
Oh yeah,
And,
that
like,
guy got completely face fucked by
Oh
Huck,
my
didn't
god, that was fucking awful. Huck?
he? Oh, was it
Legend.
someone else?
It was Valiant.
Valiant fucked him.
We were
Okay.
trying to send him to Valiant, and then they agreed, and we had like a fucking goodbye dinner for fusions, and like Asking's like, "You going to Overwatch League, bud?" And this is like next day, it's like, so we're just not going to honor the deal. It was a fucking shit deal. They shouldn't have ever agreed to it, but they did, and then they just like next day, they're like, no.
They want Fate for fusions, like the most crackhead deal ever.
Yeah, they got Asking, and we got Fate and Kyle,
Wow,
and we gave
That's a
up
good
fusions
deal.
and Asking, yeah,
that's a good deal.
and they gave us 100K.
Fusions
Hey.
asking and 100. That's
How have you
well, they didn't manage it. in
Yeah,
the end,
well.
but they were this close.
I negotiated that deal. Yeah, I remember. It was actually crazy. Like, but to be fair, I mean, I don't know. I feel like once you agree to something like that and tell all the players and everyone's like signed off on it, you should just do it. But I guess they just
Thought you were
nothing
locked
was.
in.
It was an awkward goodbye dinner for sure. I think.
That's mad.
Yeah, I
Client of the
think that's
week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, don't know. There was a guy that played for. Which team did he play for? Maybe he played. Who did we play for the Admiral team? RC 2018. Remember we had all of those Kings Rows.
Yes. But what was it?
He-
4 Kings Rows?
Yeah, we basically like effectively full capped the map, and then the Kings Row crashed. So we had like 2 minutes, and we're about to win the last fight. And after the second crash, he cheekily put in chat that, oh, maybe we should just replay the map in full, like not honor our attack because it had been replayed 2 times, as if that made any sense. Like the map had crashed, so we'll take away your attack. So I promised to give him a shout out on Client of the Week for that. So Ariel 2, that was really cheeky of you to try and. Maybe just the Blizzard admin that made the code for Kings Row that was constantly crashing.
Why was there no stream delay, by the way? Oh,
Yeah, it's actually
Oh,
true.
that was
It was
cool.
like,
That was so cool.
yeah,
Well,
But,
we
like, we all
to,
had to
the
do a
co-stream
3-minute,
members,
yeah.
we
players
needed
had
this
to
thing.
use stream
maybe that's
delay.
why. Maybe it was like an intentional. I don't know.
Competing against the mighty Uncoachable co-stream and the players' individual
Well, they had
streams
to,
for
yeah.
viewership.
Had to play dirty to stop us, you know.
Fuck's sake.
Wait.
For me, RuPaul Client of the Week, I
True.
would say, for the initial dono wall, the initial hesitation of letting the Uncoachable co-stream into their matches. because, you know, it's like we're just so fucking inconsequential. And it's like, I swear, you know, probably 80% of the people in fucking NA contenders watch the podcast, and, you know, like maybe a smaller percentage watch those casts, but people fucking in the games that watch the casts, just fucking let us in the lobby, cunt. So client of the week for me, RuPaul.
Can I do the Luke one without revealing anything?
Oh, you should absolutely do the Luke one. I retract my RuPaul. Fucking Luke Mino client of the week.
Okay, so I think I can bring it up and it doesn't give anything away, even though...
Just show the DM. It's so funny.
Yeah. So I get this message just after the co-stream. Out of the blue. I talked to Luke Mino a bit because he agreed to let us in for the co-stream, and then I get this message out of the blue saying, just curious, what is your opinion on me as a player since we are working together soon? Any big weaknesses or things I should work on? So I immediately linked this to the guys going like, what has happened? Who does he think I am? I said, are we working together soon? No, sorry, actually I'm dumb. So I was like, well, who did you think I am then? Because clearly you've mixed me up. And he says secret. So I guess we shouldn't say it on the podcast, but we do all know who it is, Luke. You fucking moron. And also, we can say who he thought I was, because we've cracked the entire code. Can we?
Yeah, well, I think... Okay. I think we can announce everything, going on? Really. I think I'm coaching Maryville next season, I think, is what's happening. Like, I mean, it's basically, I think, semi-locked in. And I think Luke is on Maryville, I think. So I think he thought that X was me and was like, oh, what about my gameplay? Being classic racist against British people, I suppose.
Can't differentiate either of us. So maybe Luke, client of the week, for not being able to tell two British people apart on Discord where it says the person's name.
Yeah, I'm happy to give it to Luke.
Do I get one as well, or what's going on?
Of course, if you've got one.
Perfect. Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I think that the chat in the All Year game against anyone that were flaming the guy who was playing Junkrat, fuck you. Like, that guy on Junkrat, that was a work of art.
It's so annoying, right?
I love watching this guy play Junkrat. Even mid-match, me and Gravy were talking to each other, like, you know, like in Discord, like watching, and we're saying, holy shit, this guy's fucking awesome. Like, this guy's killing half our team. We're still enjoying it. Like, watching, what's his name? Kaya? K-A-Y-A?
Yeah.
Watching this guy play Junkrat is fucking amazing. And then I look at the chat when they're losing, and they're just like, guys, get off Junkrat. It's like, do you know who this team is? Like, that's all they play. Like, you have to respect what they're doing, you know? Like, yeah, I think that if you're like a one-trick in rank, you should be a Junkrat one-trick. You should watch that guy, I think. That shit was awesome. Like,
everyone
one of the best performances I've seen. Yeah.
Everyone had to pick maps around him. Like, part of the reason he didn't get to do everything crazy on every map is because people were intentionally picking maps where he couldn't hard carry. Yeah, because
put in Cookie with no practice. We played like double hit scan, fucking double flex. Like, we didn't go anywhere near any walls. Like, we made sure Junkrat was impossible. Yeah. Anytime the players walked near a wall and died afterwards, but it's like, why? Why did you go near him? Like, just don't do that. Like, great. I really enjoyed watching him, and I think there was a bunch of people flaming him in the chat, and maybe even the casters I heard, but absolutely in the wrong, I think. So
wouldn't have been the Uncoachable co-stream though.
No, our viewers in the Uncoachable OW co-stream are the most intelligent. It's where you get the best fans of Overwatch.
That's where you get the real OW analysis heads, fellas.
That's
link in the chat.
100%. You know? Link in the chat.
All right, so who's winning out of this? The entire chat. Luke?
We could just give it to Twitch chat. That does seem like a really reasonable,
a reasonable client of the week.
I feel like Gunba should have, you know, final say. You know, it's his podcast. He's Hitler. You know,
true.
Twitch chat.
Yeah, we're just the Goebbels here. We're just promoting the media, but we need the message from the big man himself.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut this gag short. Gunba wins.
All right, who do you want client of the week, Gunba? Choose.
What was the first one?
It was the guy in EU Contenders trying to scam a map away from us.
That one's shit too. Also, we tried that guy out in 2020. He said that he had to go to the military if we didn't sign him, and then he kept playing for 2 years.
That's odd.
Well, weird. Surely Luke Mino, right?
Okay.
That's the worst one by far, I think.
Yeah, all right. Luke Mino.
Luke Mino, you are a fucking client.
Also, the fact that after he realized he's fucked up, he then doesn't tell me who the team is. He should at least
give the closure.
Has to diverge what has happened or who he's mistaken me for at least. But just secret tongue emoji. Grow up, Luke. So This brings us on to rank for
The end?
guests.
Finally, only 4 hours later.
Which is where we put Gunba alongside our other guests and pick where he is in the tier list.
I think it's been good. Obviously, I've had a lot of battles with the great powers of China.
You'll be excited to watch this one back later, Chris.
I can't wait to see the first half of this podcast and how it went. I would put it below Gator, second for me.
Yeah, I'm like insanely Australian biased. This is my favorite episode. I quite like Gumba. This is number one for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, anytime, mate. I'm a fraud.
Fuck, beating Gator? That would be incredible. X has the power to do it, though.
Oh, fuck.
How much on PayPal?
Well, I'm currently
This is how on
Previous
Overwatch
award,
League.
I
You
gotta
got money
be-
to splash around.
I'm currently
This is a
unemployed,
big deal.
so there's, yeah. I don't know. I think the Gator one is like, there's always like a special place in the Gator one because there was like enough divisive comments just to boost our ratings massively. But then I feel like Gumba's probably done that. He just says it more matter-of-factly. Gator sort of builds it up a little bit more to a big point. So I think in reality, maybe Gunba is number one, actually. I think there's been just as many divisive comments, and we probably had a nice wider ranging amount of comments. Or amount of
I feel like we've had
topics.
like 4 titles this episode. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
true,
actually.
true.
There was one while you were up, X, actually. While you took a piss, like 40 minutes ago, he
Yeah.
said something incredible. Like, I already can't even remember what it was, but it was so title worthy. Like, it was insane.
Well, there we go. I
Fuck
think we
Saudi
did it.
Arabia, was that the one? Or?
No,
No, it was-
There's something else.
I just wanted to say it again.
Thanks for running it back again, though.
I'll just put fuck Saudi Arabia times 3 as the title.
No, he really had a lot to give.
Yeah,
All
happy
right.
with it.
Best
And
episode ever.
literally the best episode ever.
Yep.
Easy.
Probably won't have an
Yeah.
episode next week, I think it's fair to say, because it's Christmas. Am I right in assuming that?
I'm really hoping we don't have an episode next week for Christmas.
Yeah.
That's-
Also, I'll still be in China, so this is not being. If we have to skip next week, I wouldn't be. Oh no.
I know, you've looked pretty
Oh,
thoughtful
no.
this entire episode. So that's good.
Yeah.
I think, probably not until New Year, easily, I'd say.
All right. Okay.
All right, let's put a fork in it.
Putting a
All
fork
right.
in it.
Cool. Then
All right.
have a
Thanks,
good Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, indifferent to the state of your Christmas. Goodbye.